I used to hear my stepfather talk about it. He shrugged.
It's a convenient way to launder money, but I have accountants to take care of such things. We never got involved in fixing the races. Too messy and cruel. Your stepfather, shall we say, freelanced his services as far as fixing the races was concerned. That wasn't on my orders. We only bet on races we knew were fixed by others as a sure thing for the accountants to claim the money.
I nodded and gave him an exaggerated wink. Sure, accountants.
Eat your gross eggs,
he quipped. After taking a few bites, I took a sip of coffee and grimaced. Oh my God, that's sweet.
What? I made it the way I like it,
objected Damien, as he took the cup from me and took a sip to test it. I stared down at the heavily sugared and creamed concoction. It was so sweet the liquid was a light tan. You take your coffee like a 16-year-old girl.
And you eat your eggs like a toddler,
he fired back with another wink. I rose to dump out my cup of coffee. Reaching for the pot to pour another one, I explained. The pick six is what's called an exotic bet. To win, you have to pick the winners in 6 successive races.
And that's hard.
I nodded. It's rare. Damien pivoted to face me where I remained standing by the sink. He leaned an arm over his chair. The position put his naked chest and strong, heavily tattooed muscles on casual display as if he wasn't sitting there looking like a scary gangster god in blue jeans.
Rare, but not impossible. Don't they offer those at every race?
Yep.
So what raised so many red flags with your bets?
I got greedy. I was anxious to leave home and needed money, so I placed 3 bets in 1 week. Up until that point, I had only been placing the occasional bet over a span of several months to try out my system. Not wanting to meet his gaze, I stared down at the black liquid in my cup. I didn't usually drink it completely black, but the strong bitterness grounded me this morning. I needed to keep my wits around Damien. I heard he's dead. I didn't bother saying his name or why I was so anxious to escape. We both knew why. Damien cleared his throat and reached for his coffee.
I was rectifying a past mistake.
I wasn't sure what he meant, but knew I didn't want to talk about it further. I had wasted enough of my life on my stepfather. Thank you, I said simply. He nodded. I took a deep breath and continued. It wasn't just that I won 3 times in a row. It's that a single bettor won on a single ticket. His brow furrowed.
Explain.
I returned to the table and sat. Pick sixes are complicated bets with countless possible combinations. Usually, gamblers pool their money and go for it. It's viewed almost like a lottery ticket. A large pool of gamblers purchase a large number of tickets with tons of combinations in the hopes they'll hit on the right combination and win big. He began to spin his now empty coffee mug on the table. I watched as his strong fingers played with the porcelain handle. I bit my lip, remembering the feel of those same strong hands on my body just a few hours ago. He shook his head.
That still doesn't explain why you pissed off the Italians and the Colombians so badly. You went to 3 different racetracks. I watched the security tapes. You were careful with how you cashed in the ticket. You played it really smart. Your only mistake was rushing it, but I can't see how any of this would have cost those 2 families any money as they claim.
I felt a twinge of pride that he seemed to appreciate my plan. I sat and thought about it for a minute, then said, "The track takes a cut of the pool." His intense gaze swung to me.
What?
At the end of each race, if no one wins, and usually no one does, the track takes 15% off the top and carries the remaining pool over to the next race. If no one wins for months at a time, the pool can get really big. Damien sat back in his chair.
with the track skimming straight off the top each day. That's found money. Those two families control those tracks. We only use the races occasionally to launder money. It is a much larger revenue source for the Italians and Colombians. Interesting. If we were to take control of the tracks combined with your betting algorithm...
A chill ran over my body. The speculative light in his eyes, the thoughtful tone of voice, the curious glances in my direction. I knew all the signs. I had seen it plenty of times with my stepfather. It was the look men gave you when they realized you could be useful to them. Stupid girl. I had actually started to believe Damien cared and was truly trying to protect me. He just wanted to use me like all the rest. Now that he understood why I made the bets, he'd want to know how. The how was where the real skill came in, where my method came in. He was no better than the Italians or the Colombians or even my stepfather. They all just wanted something from me. No, Damien was worse. He didn't just want my betting skills. He wanted my body as well. And if I let him have it, soon he would take my soul. I would have run straight back into the life I was trying to escape. My first instinct to run 3 years ago had been correct. I needed to get as far away from Damien Ivanov as possible. This time, for good. Before I made my escape, I needed to learn whatever I could about Samara's whereabouts. With any luck, she'd been able to run before Gregor could catch her, and she was already halfway to Montreal. "Where's Samara?" I asked with no preamble. Chapter 20. Yelena. Picking up his fork, he asked,
"Is she missing?"
before scooping the last of his eggs into his mouth. "If Gregor hurts one hair on her head, you'll both be sorry." My threat was all bluster, and we both knew it. I was powerless against him, let alone him and his brother and the whole Ivanov crime family juggernaut. Damien leaned over and put a finger beneath my chin, lifting my head.
"Baby girl, I'm trying really hard to be nice, because I know you are scared. But my patience will only stretch so far."
His dark eyes glittered with leashed anger. I had touched a nerve. "I don't know what you mean," I evaded as I lowered my eyes, breaking eye contact. "I'm not scared." The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the tiny clicks of the minute hand from the clock on the wall. The tines of my fork scraped against the porcelain plate as I tried to dispel the awkward silence. Finally he spoke. His voice was so low it was more a rumbling growl.
"What I mean is, if you don't want me to toss you on this table and spank that tight pussy of yours while I shove my thick dick down your throat till you beg for mercy between gasps of air, you had better stop asking questions that will just get you into trouble."
I remembered the rumors about how his anger could flash hot without any warning. Damien. My eyes widened at the vivid picture he had just painted. My thigh muscles tightened at the idea that he was capable of doing just what he threatened. Flashes of us on the rooftop flickered across my mind. I harumphed. "You're totally a Scorpio." Damien sat back in his chair, his forehead furrowed in bewilderment.
"What?"
"A Scorpio. Were you born in November?" Damien nodded. I could see the look of tempered curiosity cross his features. He was going to indulge me, but for how long? I figured as much. Scorpios are very intense signs, very focused. Like dogs with bones. Damien raised an eyebrow as his eyes lowered to his crotch. Mine followed. I instantly regretted it when I saw the outline of his heavy cock pressing against the fabric of his jeans. I stood up so quickly the chair toppled onto the floor behind me. Bending over to pick it up, I heard Damien's harsh inhalation. Looking over my shoulder, I realized he was staring at my ass, probably remembering the last time he saw me in this position. Oh, God. Shower. I need a shower.
Baby, we don't have time for this. I don't have anything concrete yet, but I have little doubt the Colombians are in town, and they will be looking for you.
Please, I pleaded. Damien ran his hand through his hair. For a moment, I thought he was going to say no and follow through with his threat. He surprised me by saying yes. We walked down the narrow, bare hallway to a master bedroom. It looked like an IKEA catalog had thrown up, like someone had chosen page 23 out of the catalog and had it shipped right down to the plastic demo room plant. Is this your place? I asked, trying really hard to keep the judgment out of my voice. Damien turned and gave me a nasty look.
You can't seriously think I live here. What kind of tasteless Neanderthal do you take me for?
I shrugged my shoulders as I followed him into the bathroom. It had an odd IKEA/I Love Florida theme with a palm tree pattern shower curtain and pink flamingo wallpaper. I covered my mouth to prevent a laugh at the pink fluffy toilet seat cover.
It's a safe house we occasionally use when we have delicate business in Chicago,
explained Damien with a twist of his lips as he pulled the curtain aside and started the water. Business. That's all I was to him. Business. A tool to be used to make money and perhaps fuck once in a while. I'd be smart to remember that. Turning back to me, he put his hands on his hips and ordered, "Strip." It took me a moment to realize what he had said. The dangling handcuffs rattled as I put my hands protectively over my breasts as if they were already bared to his gaze. What? His voice, though quiet and calm, held an edge of annoyance.
Take off your clothes.
Shaking my head, I tried to back away, but he leaned over me and closed the door. I changed my mind. I don't want a shower, I blurted out.
Too late. You're getting one. You're still covered in dust and dirt from the rooftop.
Self-consciously, I brushed a hand over my dirty jeans. Still, I refused to obey. Apparently, in no mood for arguments, Damien tried to grab me. I screamed and reached for the doorknob. His body pressed me in. Fuck. He was so much taller than me. His size and bulk overwhelmed me. Grabbing my arms, he pulled them high over my head. I could feel his rough hand on my stomach as he fisted the hem of my shirt and ruthlessly pulled it off. He lowered my arms. There was a tension around my rib cage as he pulled on the clasp of my bra before that, too, hit the bathroom floor. Please, I cried. He didn't listen. Turning me to face him, he kept his hard eyes on mine as he unfastened my jeans. The brush of his warm knuckles against my cool skin made me suck in my stomach in a vain attempt to avoid his touch. Taking a step back, he crossed his heavy arms over his chest. With a nod of his chin, he said,
You should know the drill by now. Kick them off.
I brushed the back of my hand across my tearing eyes. I knew I was caught. There was nothing in the bathroom I could use as a weapon. Hell, if a brick to the head didn't slow him down, I doubted hitting him with a fucking soap dish would do the trick. Hesitantly, I dug the toe of my right foot into the heel of my left sneaker and kicked it free. Then did the same with my left foot. As I looked down to push the jeans off my hips, I saw the blood. Blood! I'm bleeding! I cried out as I twisted to examine my side and back. The dark crimson smears of dried blood looked gruesome against my pale skin.
That's my blood,
uttered Damien calmly. My eyes went to the bandaged wound on his side. The white bandage looked stark against his deeply tanned and inked skin. He must have gotten blood on me when we were on the roof when he did that thing with his fingers. I clenched my thighs at the memory. Oh, I responded lamely. Biting my lip, I shimmied the jeans off my hips. My cheeks flamed a bright pink as I remembered my silk panties had been left on the rooftop earlier, covered in Damien's cum. I was a natural blonde, so the curls between my legs were so light, the seam between the folds was visible. I might as well have been completely bare.
Now spread your legs.
The bathroom had started to mist from the hot water running in the shower. The mirrors and small window fogged up. His skin glistened, making the bright colors of the tattoos on his arms vivid and almost lifelike. They were done in bright golds, oranges, yellows, and blues. Mythic beasts and symbols all intertwined. I knew Russians put great meaning behind their tattoos. It made me curious as to what the meaning was behind his. Looking at his hands, it was more of the same, but none of the usual prison tattoos like you'd see on my stepfather's friends. No religious symbols or knives or suit symbols from a deck of cards. Placing my hands against the wall for support, I slid my feet open.
Wider,
he barked. I obeyed. I couldn't recall a single moment in my life where I had felt more vulnerable or more aroused. Fuck. What was this man doing to me? This was so freaking messed up. Damien took a step toward me. I inhaled sharply and held my breath. I closed my eyes as I watched his arm reach out. A single finger traced my collarbone, then the upper swell of my right breast, then over my navel. My stomach quivered from the warmth of his touch. He continued to caress lower till his large hand cupped my pussy. That same finger pushed between my folds to press inside my tight passage. I bit my lip to keep from crying out as I kept my eyes screwed tight. He shifted closer, then a whisper in my ear.
You were a very bad Malenki angel today, weren't you?
Without thought, I nodded.
You made me very angry when I had to chase you across the city.
He growled as his lips skimmed my neck before skimming my jaw to claim my lips. A Scorpio through and through, he claimed my lips with ruthless possession as if it were his right. The tip of his tongue traced the sharp edge of my teeth before swirling around my own. His hand slid up into my hair, pulling my head back. The sting of pain just brought the consuming kiss into sharper focus. I tried not to respond. I felt like I was falling, being pulled down into his gravity. Trying to keep my wits about me, I skimmed my hand over his hip and slipped it into his back pocket. Slightly breathless, he abruptly broke the kiss.
And now you continue to be a brat, petulantly not responding to my orders. Or my kiss.
He pushed a second finger in and began to pulse. My whole body started to tremble, and I desperately wanted him to brush his thumb across my clit and relieve the building pressure.
So now I have to punish you.
My eyes opened in shock as I could only manage a frightened squeak in response.
Raise your arms.
Damien, I cajoled as I tried to think what I could say to talk my way out of the punishment I knew I deserved. Hell, I had tried to shoot the man twice and managed to inflict a knife wound in the bargain. Oh, and then there was the brick.
Do it,
he barked. Frightened, I raised my arms. The handcuff clattered against the now steam-slick wall. I wondered if he was going to connect them again, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned in and met my gaze.
Remember, it's never a good idea to make me mad.
The sharp pain took me by surprise. He had spanked me between the legs. Oh God! He spanked me again. I cried out as I tried to smash my knees together. Damien's strong hands forced my thighs apart.
Take your punishment like a good girl.
He spanked me again. The pulsing heat was unbearable. I clawed at the wall behind my hips. I watched through tear-filled eyes as his arm rose and fell over and over again. With each strike, my whole body jolted from the twisted, pleasurable pain. In that moment, I would have given anything for him to take me into his arms and fuck me senseless. Damien leaned over and cupped my jaw.
Eventually, you will understand that I'm actually trying to protect you. And you fighting me won't change that, no matter how many times you try to shoot me,"
he said sardonically. Pushing the tangled hair from my eyes, he gently led me to the shower. He checked the temperature with his hand and adjusted it before allowing me to step in. The water felt soothing on my face, but it stung the moment it trickled over my swollen, punished flesh. I hissed in a breath through clenched teeth.
"Do you need help?"
Dazed, I shook my head. I needed to be alone, if only for the spare minutes the shower would provide. Needed to think about how I'd almost given my body to the demon devil himself. Damien ran his hand over my shoulder and down my arm in what I thought was a calming caress, till he lifted my arm high. Then a click from the handcuffs. He had handcuffed my right hand to the metal shower rod. I opened my mouth to curse at him, but started to cough as water rushed in.
"I will be back to check on you in 5 minutes."
He tossed over his shoulder as he turned to leave. With a cry of outrage, I threw the wet washcloth at his back. It landed against his bare shoulder before falling to the tiled floor with a splat. He just laughed and kept walking. Well, I would be the one with the last laugh when he returned to find me gone.
Chapter 21. Damien. Damn, that woman was going to be the death of me. Literally. I pulled on the adhesive strips of the bandage on my side. The bleeding had already stopped. The edges of the cut were sealed with dried blood. I pulled the rest of the bandage free before reaching into my bag for another black t-shirt. This was my last clean one on hand. I was also wearing my last pair of clean jeans. The other pair was covered in tar and grit from the roof. A few more days with Yelena, and I would need a new wardrobe. The very domestic thought of strolling through a mall with Yelena as she dragged me into one designer store after another, picking out clothes to dress her man, crossed my mind. And you know what? It didn't suck. Especially when I thought about how that beautiful little face would be smiling up at me the whole time. It was amazing that a woman so small and feminine could also be so strong and stubborn. It definitely was one of the things which fascinated and drew me to her. Despite her diminutive size, I knew she would take a pounding from my cock and scream for more. I reached down to adjust my shaft inside my jeans. Back in the bathroom, I had wanted nothing more than to have spread her legs wide and sink deep into her tight cunt. Just the thought of how the warm skin of her punished pussy would feel against the sensitive underside of my cock had me turning in that direction, but I reined myself in. She needed some space and time alone, if only for a few minutes. And above all things I needed her to trust me. It was the only way I was going to be able to keep her safe. The thought of tying her to the bed and strapping that curved ass of hers with my belt immediately came to mind. But that way didn't build trust. Walking into the kitchen, I picked up the Glock Yelena had set aside and checked the magazine. It was full. Thank God that woman didn't know guns, or my crazy baby girl might have actually succeeded in shooting me if she had properly chambered a bullet. I was about to tuck it into my back waistband when I heard a soft knock at the door. Listening to make sure the shower was still running, I raised the gun as I approached the door from the side just in case whoever was on the other side got the funny idea to shoot straight through the door.
"Who is it?" "It's your friend, Vasko Lukovich Rostov,"
came the muffled response. Releasing the chain and deadbolt, I opened the door.
"Vaska."
I clapped him on the shoulder, and we kissed each other's cheeks.
"I haven't seen you since that close call in Uzbekistan."
Vasko winked.
"That redhead almost got me killed, but she was worth it."
I shook my head.
"You always like the troublemakers."
He slapped me on the back.
And you, my friend, are no different. I bring gifts.
He held up a duffel bag.
I had to send Jim on another errand, so I offered to bring these to you.
I took it from him and gestured for him to enter. As soon as he crossed the threshold, I double-checked that the hallway was clear before securing the door. With a nod of his head, Vaska gestured to the duffel bag.
It has her clothes.
Taking the duffel, I walked down the hallway to the master bedroom. Tossing it on the bed, I reached for the bathroom door, pausing to take a deep breath before entering. I needed to stay calm and focused, since I knew the sight of her wet skin and naked form would likely drive me fucking crazy with lust, especially knowing she was handcuffed and vulnerable to whatever I wanted to do to her. I opened the door. There she was, obediently standing in the shower stall. With the use of only one hand, she'd missed a spot of foamy suds on her right side. The creamy bubbles caressed her butt cheek and hip. Taking a step closer, I kept my eyes trained on hers as I smoothed my hand over her skin, washing away the soap. The dark tan on my hand looked almost menacing against her pale skin tinted slightly pink from the warmth of the water. Her beautiful blue eyes were a dark cobalt blue in the soft morning light that filtered through the glazed glass window. I leaned in closer. My cock jumped at the sight of her full lips opening. An invitation. Gritting my teeth, I reminded myself to focus. After digging the key out of my front pocket, I reached up to unlock the handcuff from the shower rod. Holding her hand, I also unlocked the one around her wrists.
Don't make me regret this,
I warned as I palmed the handcuffs. She remained silent. I wasn't dumb enough to think it was from submissive obedience. Not my treacherous little angel. No, she was remaining quiet and still as she assessed the situation. I placed a towel around her shoulders and held tight to the ends which crossed over her full breasts.
I had some of your clothes retrieved from your place. They're on the bed. Do not leave the bedroom until I come to get you. Do you understand?
Elena nodded. Using my right hand as I kept a grip on the towel with my left, I lifted her chin and shifted closer, every fiber of my being aware of her near-naked state.
I mean it, baby. Do not cross that threshold, or I will give you the thrashing of your life.
She remained silent. Stroking my thumb across her jaw, I pushed.
Ovet me near.
Her blue eyes lit with fire. She knew what I wanted to hear. I watched as she licked her lips. The dark, dusky pink now glimmered, practically begging to be kissed. The room was so still I could hear her delicate indrawn breath.
Fine,
she acquiesced.
Good girl,
I asserted, as I gave her a chaste kiss on the forehead, and resisted the urge to wrap my hands around her head to hold her steady for a kiss, which I knew would consume us both. Leaving her to dress, I returned to the kitchen to talk with Vaska. He had helped himself to a cup of coffee. I poured myself a fresh cup as well, wishing it was scotch. I needed something bracing to cool the heat in my blood. Tossing the handcuffs and key onto the table, I reached for her backpack, which I had brought in earlier from the car. It was filled with cash, jewels, several passports and IDs, as well as a small revolver. Tucked in with all the valuables were several small plastic toys. Sifting through them, I found one I recognized. The small Hello Kitty toy she had gotten in the Happy Meal I bought her all those years ago. She had not only kept it, but placed it among all the items of greater value, and apparently had continued collecting the silly toys. Who knew my angel was so sentimental? I felt my cold core thaw even further. If I wasn't careful, I was going to find myself not only obsessed with her, but in love as well. I shook my head. That could never happen. It would be the ruin of both of us. History was filled with the tragedies that ensued when angels and demons dared to tempt fate and fall in love. Placing the toy back inside, I zipped up the bag and pushed it toward Vaska with a decided shove.
Can you hold on to this for me?
I knew better than to keep it with me. It only increased the chance my little escape artist would run again. Only this time she would get further. I wasn't stupid enough to think I would have caught her so easily at O'Hare if she had her go-bag with money and IDs on her at the time. Even then, I'd barely caught up with her. If she had reached that escalator, she would have been close to the main floor of the airport where there was significantly more security than there was at the metro station. Disguising a sleeper hold as a hug from an over-exuberant lover, I only just managed to literally sweep her off her feet and carry her back to my car. The whole thing just drew longing looks from the female passers-by, wondering why their boyfriends and husbands didn't greet them as passionately. If they only knew. Vaska pushed away my empty plate and sat down.
Gregor wanted me to tell you he's moved up his plans, Miss Samara. There's trouble with the Novikovs. He wants to know if you secured Elena, and if your plan for her was moving forward.
I looked over my shoulder, searching the hallway for any sign of Elena, straining to see a shifting shadow or hear a creak of a floorboard. There was nothing. For once she had obeyed me.
Tell him yes. Everything is going to plan. What's the issue with the Novikovs?
We rarely, if ever, did business with that family. They were too unhinged, too prone to violence for violence sake. It was bad for business. Vaska took a sip of coffee before answering.
Boris Fedorov made his second side deal with Igor. Sold his daughter out from under Gregor. Are you fucking kidding me?
Gregor's future father-in-law was a real piece of work, but I never thought he was stupid enough to double-cross us. No one fucked with our family, especially not someone who took millions of dollars in cash for his daughter's hand and then let her slip away right from under his nose. Boris had balls, betraying Gregor after my brother had spent the last 3 years tracking down Samara.
The Verdi sent a crew to Chicago to try and grab her. Am I needed?
Vaska shook his head.
Gregor's handling it. Besides, he says you have your hands full with Elena.
His mouth twitched. I pointed at him.
Don't you fucking dare, asshole.
He raised his arms, his palms up in a placating gesture.
What? I wasn't going to say anything.
I leaned back in my chair. Vaska continued.
On a completely different topic. If you need them, I can get you an extra first aid kit and maybe a bulletproof vest for the wedding night.
I laughed. I should have known Gregor wouldn't keep his mouth shut about my encounter with Yelena.
Fuck you. Besides, you're one to talk. What? I hear Dmitri's new wife has a friend who's been giving you a run for your money.
It was Vaska's turn to look disgruntled.
That woman will be the death of me. Speaking of Mary, are you still using these?
He lifted up the discarded handcuffs.
They're all yours.
He rose and tucked them into his suit jacket front pocket.
By the way, Dmitri put a stop to the police investigation over what happened at O'Hare earlier, and the cleaners have been to her condo. There's no trace she was ever there.
I nodded.
Good. We can't afford to have anyone ask too many questions. We need to keep a lid on this. I can't have anyone wondering about her or Samara's disappearance.
Vaska picked up the backpack full of money and jewels and headed toward the door.
I guess congratulations are in order. Will you wait to return to D.C. to marry her, or will you marry here?
I slapped him on the back and smiled.
Haven't decided yet. Probably whatever's fastest. I want the word out as soon as possible that Yelena is under my protection. I don't want to worry about this mess with the Colombians if we have trouble with the Novikovs brewing.
Vaska nodded.
In all seriousness, stay safe, my friend. We Russians may be crazy fucks, but the Colombians...
He shook his head.
Shit with them gets messy.
Russian crime families like ours were known for meting out swift and brutal retribution. But it was only with men and always about business. The Colombians didn't operate by the same code. Everyone was fair game, women and children included. They also favored kidnapping and torture, something I never had the stomach for. The idea that a crew might be at this very moment trying to track down Yelena made me sick with anger and fear. After Vaska's departure, I relocked the door and went in to speak to Yelena. Her time had run out. It was time to inform her of my plans to marry her, and that I had no intentions of taking no for an answer. Frankly, she didn't have a choice. She could give me what I wanted the easy way or the hard way. My hand moved to rest on the thick metal of my belt buckle. As I neared the bedroom, I could hear a hairdryer running. Pleased that she had obeyed my instructions and had just continued to get dressed while I talked with Vaska, I turned the knob and swung open the door without knocking, half hoping she liked to dry her hair naked. The room was empty. The running hairdryer was on the floor, abandoned. Lifting my head, I immediately saw the open window. I ran over to it and stuck my head out to survey the side of the building. There wasn't any sign of her on the wall or ground. Turning my shoulders, I looked up to the roof for evidence of any rope. There was none. Slamming my fist against the sill, I let out a roar of frustration. When I caught her this time, and I would catch her, I would make sure she regretted ever disobeying me. The time for games and a light touch was over. My angel was about to learn it was dangerous to defy a demon.
Chapter 22. Yelena. Married to Damien. Oh my God, married to that man? After I turned another block and confirmed I wasn't being followed, I began to breathe easier, but I still needed to hustle. If he hadn't already, Damien was about to learn I had escaped, and I just knew the first place he would come looking for me was the airport. I needed to beat him there and get past security where I'd be safe in the terminals. The conversation I had overheard just kept spinning over and over again in my head. Married. He expected me to marry him. And not some pretty wedding of a girl's dreams. There would be no flowers or Vera Wang wedding gown or ring from Tiffany's. Nope. If Damien had his way, he'd probably drag me by my hair to the nearest courthouse and have a judge marry us at his desk over his half-eaten bologna sandwich at lunchtime. And why not? It's not like it would be a love match. I was a means to an end, a business deal, a way to get the Ivanov family deeper into the horse racing racket with less risk and higher returns. Oh, and bonus for him, he'd get to fuck me. My hands curled into fists. Here to protect me, my ass. I should have known better. I was actually lucky Damien hadn't seen me creep along the hallway. There was a moment when he turned and practically stared straight at me. After hearing all I needed, I'd headed back to the room and set the stage. I opened the window and started the hairdryer. I then hid behind the door. When Damien entered and saw the discarded hairdryer in the open window, he did exactly what I thought he would. As he raced across the room to see if he could catch me escaping along the wall, I snuck around the door and down the hallway. I knew the sound of the hairdryer would mask the sound of my steps. I was out of the apartment and headed toward Lakeview before he'd even left the bedroom. Seeing a yellow car approach, I raised my arm high. After jumping into the backseat of the cab, I gave the driver an address along Montrose Avenue. Leaning back in the seat, I pulled the wallet out of my back pocket and opened it. I took out the driver's license and studied it. Damien Alexander Ivanov. Born November 11, 1993. Eyes blue, hair black, height 6'3". I knew he was a Scorpio. I smiled as I fanned myself with his license. He was going to be so pissed when he realized I'd lifted his wallet. I thought for sure he'd heard the soft thud when I dropped it to the floor among my pile of clothes. At least I'd had one hell of a goodbye kiss. A goodbye kiss. Forever. Why did that idea hurt? I needed to get a grip. Sure, he was hot as fuck. Sure, the whole prospect of rough, mind-blowing sex with him turned me on, but he was dangerous, and I needed to get as far away as possible from him. The fact that he intrigued me and challenged me like no other man was of no consequence. But seriously? Damn him for that. Damn him for being charming and fascinating. Damn him for being the type of man who gave as good as he got. I crossed my arms in a huff. And damn him for even knowing his t-shirt was designed by Varvatos. It was a little thing, but it really irritated me that I had finally found the holy grail of men. A man who was masculine and aggressive, but also appreciated designer clothes and looking good. Peeved, I dug through his wallet to see what else I could learn. I pulled free an American Express black card. Impressive. I stared at the titanium card with the laser-etched numbers. Only the massively wealthy got an invitation for one of these. I wondered if it was true they would send a helicopter for you anywhere in the United States. Unfortunately, I would not find out. There was no way I could get away with buying so much as a coffee with this card. It was so rare it would definitely cause a stir, and they would very quickly realize I didn't look like an over 6-foot-tall Russian. Curious, I picked up his driver's license again. No. Don't do this. Don't start believing what he said just because you're falling for him. Falling for him? Where the hell had that come from? I wasn't falling for him. That would be the height of stupidity. So what if he was sexy and funny and it was super fun pushing his buttons? And it really was fun pushing his buttons. Despite all the danger, I honestly couldn't remember the last time I'd felt such a rush of energy as I had with that big angry Russian chasing me halfway around Chicago. If I were brutally honest, I was just a tiny bit disappointed that I'd probably managed to escape him for good this time. What the hell was wrong with me? Shaking off disturbing thoughts of falling in love with a man who only wanted to use me to launder his dirty mafia money, I continued to sift through his wallet. Tucked behind a few other credit cards and a gym membership card was a photo. My heart sank. It was a beautiful woman. She had gorgeous green eyes and black hair which made her pale skin glow. I flipped the photo over. To Damien. XOXO, Natasha. Natasha. Even her name was elegant and beautiful. A stab of white-hot jealousy pierced my heart. Well, this was proof he was only playing with me as part of some sick and twisted game of revenge. Forgetting that the entire scenario was in my imagination, I immediately assumed this was the model he had taken to the Rachmaninoff piano concert. At least her name wasn't Fifi.
We're here,
said the cab driver. I opened the cash flap of Damien's wallet. There was probably about $3,000 in $100 bills. I took out 3 bills and paid the $5 fare. Keep the change.
Lady, are you sure?
Asked the cab driver as his eyes widened at the sight of 3 crisp $100 bills. I gave him a wink and left the cab. Having cash was nice, but if I was going to catch a flight out of the country, I needed a passport and some better clothes and a suitcase. Showing up in the airport with no luggage and a wad of cash was a great way to get yourself strip-searched in some dingy back room by a TSA guard named Larry. As I walked down Montrose, I snatched a baseball cap off the back of a chair as I passed an outdoor cafe. Twirling my hair into a loose bun, I shoved as much of it as I could under the cap and pulled it low over my eyes. I then leaned down and swiped a jean jacket resting over a gym bag as the guy's back was turned while he punched in his PIN at an ATM. I put the jacket on over my black hoodie. I was grateful that whoever Damien had sent to my condo to pick up some clothes had actually pulled them from my bureau drawers and not the closet. The closet was where I kept all my designer labels. The bureau was where I kept my workout clothes, and truthfully, the clothes Samara and I wore whenever we hightailed it out of his city for fear Damien and Gregor were closing in. Flexible fabric for easy movement, nondescript, all black. Mostly yoga pants and hoodies. Nothing that would stand out or be memorable. In other words, none of my preferred designer clothes. Montrose was on the edge of the Ravenswood neighborhood. It was an affluent neighborhood filled with large houses. Careful to not draw attention to myself, I made a left onto Winchester as I casually strolled down the street, occasionally checking my wrist as if I were checking a fitness tracker. No one would think anything of a woman walking around the block to get her steps in. I looked for signs that a homeowner was not at home. I was lucky. It was probably around noon, so it was the perfect time to break in. It was funny how most people were led to think that burglars only attacked at night. A very silly Hollywood invention. Why would you break in at night when it was almost guaranteed that the residents were home? No. It was far more effective to do it during the day when most of the neighborhood was out and about at work or running errands. Samara and I had to borrow things occasionally over the last 3 years when we got jammed up or had to hightail it out of a city without the proper amount of cash on hand in those early months before we got smarter. It had been a few years, but I think I still remembered how. As I walked past each house, I looked for the signs. Was there evidence of a dog? A car in the driveway? Signs of a security camera? Finally, I spotted my perfect target. The home was set slightly back from the road. Empty driveway. A large, tall fence in the backyard and a massive oak tree in the front. Great for concealment. There were flower beds and dainty curtains in the windows, which meant there was probably a female in residence. Looking around to make sure I wasn't observed, I opened the mailbox of my target house and removed a few letters. Boldly, I walked up to my target. I would knock on the door and use the excuse that I had received some of their mail. Taking a deep breath, I raised my fist and knocked. I waited. Nothing. I listened. No barking dog, no television. Perfect. Tossing the mail on the front porch bench, I made my way around the side of the house. Grasping the edge of the fence, I easily hauled myself up and over. The fence was at least 5 feet tall and provided the perfect cover from any prying eyes from the street or next door. I made my way to the back door. I tried the doorknob just in case I got lucky. Nope, locked. I didn't have my lock-picking kit with me, so I would just have to improvise. The sound of shattering glass carried much further, as it was much more of an alarming sound than a dull thud. When people heard glass breaking, they knew something was wrong. When they heard a strange loud bang and then silence, they just wondered if something was wrong, but in the absence of any other loud noises, they tended to move on with their day without another thought. Knowing this, I took a step back and kicked the door just to the right of the doorknob and lock. The door sprung open with a loud bang. Just to be certain, I stepped to the side and listened for any cry of alarm from inside of the house. Silence. Closing the door behind me, I entered the unoccupied kitchen. Immediately, I sprinted to the front hall and looked for evidence of an alarm system. It would be a matter of a few seconds to disable it, but fortunately, there wasn't one. Heading back to the kitchen, I walked over to the refrigerator and grabbed the largest magnet I could find. Without wasting any more time, I headed straight upstairs for the master bedroom. Ignoring the jewelry box proudly displayed on the vanity, I headed straight for the walk-in closet. I spared a glance for the dresses hung neatly. Pulling one pink and gold dress out, I wondered if it was in my size. It was last season Gucci. This woman had nice taste. I set the hanger back. I had to get to business first. The safe was almost always hidden in the closet on the male side. Pushing aside several suits, I found it. It was a Sentry safe. Perfect. Inexpensive home safes were ridiculously easy to break into. They weren't really a deterrent to a real burglar. They just made the homeowner feel more in control. Crouching down, I placed the magnet next to the handle. I knew a nickel solenoid prevented the handle from turning and pulled the bolts into place. All you had to do was displace the solenoid with a magnetic field. I could hear the lock trip. Opening the door, I pulled out the small jewelry boxes and the pile of papers. On top were 2 passports. I grabbed the female one. She was a brunette and a little taller than me, but it should work, especially if I flirted with the TSA agent while he was checking it. I put back the other valuables. The last thing I wanted was for them to think their safe had been cracked and have the police flag the passport. Looking around the closet, I grabbed a small pink weekender bag and tossed in the Gucci dress and a pair of heels. The richer I looked, the less likely anyone at the airport would suspect or stop to question me. After grabbing an Yves Saint Laurent jacket and matching scarf, I made sure everything looked in order before heading back downstairs. Going back into the kitchen, I replaced the magnet and opened the refrigerator. I grabbed a yogurt and apple. Looking around, I noticed they actually still had a landline. Sweet. Picking up the receiver, I dialed 911. "Hello, police? Please hurry. I just saw a shady-looking man hop over a neighbor's fence. I think he might be a burglar." After giving them the address, I hung up. Heading through the backyard, I tossed the luggage over the fence and then followed. I was back on Montrose when I heard the sirens. After seeing no electronics or jewelry missing, the homeowners and police would assume the sound of the sirens had interrupted the burglar before they'd had a chance to steal anything. Even if they did check the safe, they would probably be so focused on the valuables, they wouldn't even notice the missing passport. I bit into the apple as I walked to catch the next Metro train. I decided on the Weston. It was close to the airport, but not too close, and had a shuttle. After using Damien's cash to secure a room, I had to give the front desk clerk a little extra on the side so he wouldn't ask for ID, but he made me leave a credit card number, so I had no choice but to use Damien's. I probably could have given him more money or talked my way out of it, but something stopped me. Maybe it was my way of taunting Damien, pushing his buttons again, challenging him to find me by just leaving little breadcrumbs. It was only for one night. I would be gone by dawn on the first flight available to Montreal. Too bad there were no more flights today. I opened the hotel room door and collapsed onto the bed. Desperately, I wished I could get a hold of Samara. I didn't have a phone and knew she had probably already ditched hers. I hated leaving Chicago, knowing she was in the clutches of Gregor and Damien, but I had no choice. Obviously, I couldn't go to the police, especially after hearing they were in the Ivanovs' back pocket. I had to stick to the plan and head to Montreal. Feeling a little better with a plan, I decided to run myself a bath and order a big bottle of wine from room service. I knew I should eat, but all I wanted right now was a cool, numbing glass of wine. I ordered the best, most overpriced bottle they had. What did I care about the cost? Damien was buying. The fact that they would charge his card since I paid cash for the room crossed my mind. I was playing with fire, and I knew it.
Chapter 23. Damien. She looked almost innocent, deceptively so. Her long blonde hair spread out on the pillow. She slept on her stomach with one knee pulled up and the covers kicked off. She was dressed only in a pair of silk panties. This pair was black with a pattern of tiny red cherries. Her skin looked soft and warm. I had to resist the urge to run my fingertips up her spine. Her beautiful full lips were slightly parted. Every now and then, she made the cutest mewing sound. After seeing she was gone, I'd raced to the apartment door and immediately noticed it was unlocked. Then I realized what the clever minx had done. I shook my head, still not believing I had fallen for such an old tried-and-true trick. No doubt about it. This woman had me turned around and upside down. Life from this point forward was never going to be boring. Not with Yelena by my side. And she would be right by my side if I had to chase her halfway around the globe. There was just some women who were worth it. Besides, I'd be lying if I didn't say I loved the chase. It was no fun hunting easy prey. Any other woman in my life was just that. Easy prey. The moment I approached, they rolled onto their backs, exposing their vulnerable undersides and just begging me to pet them. Not Yelena. Each time I approached, she bit, clawed, and kicked, forcing me to overpower her, forcing me to compel her submission through my superior strength. I shifted in my seat as my cock grew thick and heavy at just the thought of it. Hell yeah. It was way more fun hunting prey that fought back. Problem was, we were out of time, and I was out of patience. Standing up, I leaned over her prone form. Picking up one silky curl, I used the end to tease and tickle her soft cheek. Her little nose scrunched and twitched. Her arm came up to brush her cheek. I tickled her skin again. This time with a sleepy huff, she rolled onto her back, giving her time to settle in. I took a step back and reached into my duffel bag for the padded wrist restraints I had packed especially for when I caught up to her. Carefully, I lifted one wrist off the pillow and slipped her hand through. I then secured the belt strapped to the headboard. She slept on. Helped no doubt by the half-empty bottle of wine on the room service tray which I apparently bought with my credit card. That she had managed to lift my wallet without my noticing still rankled me. The worst part was I didn't even know when she had lifted it. Was it on the roof or later? I would be damned if I would ask her. It was bad enough she had lifted it without my notice. I wasn't going to let her know I didn't have the first clue as to when it had happened. My baby girl would get way too smug over that tidbit of information. Crossing the room, I stepped to the other side of the bed. Once more, I gently lifted her wrist and put her hand through the padded restraint. After securing the second strap to the other side of the headboard, she was well and truly trapped. Returning to my seat across from the bed, I took a moment to admire my view. She had amazing breasts, just enough to fill a man's hand. My cock got harder just at the thought of sucking one of those cute pink nipples into my mouth, scraping the delicate flesh against my teeth, giving my baby the edge of pain I knew she enjoyed. Her lithe body was now stretched out and open, her legs gently spread, as if she were waiting for me. Aware the clock was ticking, I decided it was time to wake her up. I lifted the lid off the ice bucket and loudly dropped 2 ice cubes into a highball glass. Reaching into my jacket pocket, I pulled out my silver flask and poured myself a generous portion of Macallan Rare as I watched her eyelids flutter. It took her a moment to realize she wasn't alone in the room. I could tell the precise moment she learned she was tied to the bed. I watched as she tested the tight binds and tried in vain to sit up. Then her vivid, bright blue eyes turned on me. My pretty angel let loose an ear-piercing scream and a string of curses that would impress a drunken sailor. I had a fairly impressive vocabulary, but I must admit even I learned a few new ones. I think several of them might have even been in French. Calmly, I raised my glass and took a sip, relishing in the smooth bite as the slightly chilled scotch coursed down my throat. Yellow you like. I took the liberty of booking all the surrounding rooms. I didn't want to chance that we would be disturbed. Fuck you, Damien, shouted Elena as she kicked out. I smiled. Is that an invitation? I stood. She immediately quieted as her wide eyes watched my hands lower to undo my belt buckle. With a snap, I pulled the heavy leather free of the jean loop. I wouldn't fuck you if you were the last man on earth, she hissed. I leaned over the bed, my hands falling on either side of her head, capturing some of her hair and pinning her in place. Looking deeply into her enraged eyes, I warned, Well then, it's a good thing I have no intention of asking your permission. Her mouth opened on an outraged gasp, and I swooped down to claim it, bruising her lips with a punishing kiss, taking more than I gave. Breaking the kiss, I stood over her half-naked form. Gesturing with a nod, I said, I see you helped yourself to the cash in my wallet. Elena stayed stubbornly silent. Too bad you also used the credit card. That was a stupid rookie mistake. You had to have known the American Express concierge would call me. That card is heavily monitored. I narrowed my eyes as I watched the play of emotions cross her features. She had to have known using that card was a risk. Hell, slipping a quick 100 to the front desk clerk would have solved the issue. But she hadn't. She'd given him the credit card. Did she want me to catch her? Maybe she wasn't even aware of it, but I think she did. And I had no intention of disappointing her now that she was back under my control. I'm not going to marry you, she ground out. Chapter 24. Damien. I ran a hand through my hair. I couldn't contain a frustrated sigh. So you overheard. Are you going to deny it? She accused. She strained against the binds to raise up her shoulders and meet my gaze. Her chest flushed a delicate pink as she became more agitated. I heard you talking about me, dictating my future as if I had absolutely no say in the matter. She didn't, but that was definitely not the way I wanted her to learn of my marriage plans. But it changed nothing. We would be married as soon as I could arrange it.
Baby, it's for your own protection.
Liar. You just want to use me. You're no better than the Italians or those stupid Colombians or my stepfather, she spit out. Grabbing her by the jaw, I forced her to lock gazes with mine.
Baby girl, you don't want to test my patience right now,
I threatened, holding on to my self-control by a very thin thread. If she wasn't a virgin, I would have fucked her raw by now. As it was, I knew I would have to come first at least once to ease the tension before I even tried to fuck her. Otherwise, I might hurt her. I don't like your tone, she fired back.
You're about to like far less than my fucking tone.
Tears sprang to her eyes and she whispered, I hate you. I reached for the hem of my t-shirt and pulled it over my head.
We both know that's far from the truth.
No, I really do fucking hate your guts. I shrugged.
Guess I'm just going to have to prove you wrong.
Yelena pulled on her binds. Not exactly a fair fight. Are you so afraid of me that you have to tie me up to win? I chuckled. Damn if this little brat didn't relish in pushing my buttons. She could spew profanities and declare her hatred all she wanted. I could see the light in her eyes, the flush on her cheeks, the way her thighs clenched and quivered whenever I stepped near the bed. She may have hated me, but she wanted me all the same. Keeping my eyes trained on her, I lowered the zipper to my jeans and stepped out of them. My erect cock sprang free. Her eyes fell to my waist, then lower. Taking my cock in my fist, I gave it a few pumps. It was one thing to feel all 10 inches press into her lower back like she had on the roof earlier, but it was another to get a good look at it. I knew the sight intimidated her. Good. Turning, I reached into my bag for the pink stiletto knife she had thrown at me earlier. Making sure she could see the handle and recognize it as her own, I flicked the blade open. Resting a knee on the mattress, I swiftly sliced through the thin silk fabric of her panties over each hip. Gripping the center, my fingers grazing the soft mound of her cunt, I pulled the fabric free. Bastard, she fumed. Padding barefoot across the room, I dropped 4 more ice cubes into my glass before pouring a generous 3 fingers from my flask. I took a sip as I returned to the bed. Setting the glass within reach on the nightstand, I placed a knee on the mattress. As I expected, Yelena kicked out at me with her left leg. I easily captured her ankle in a strong grip, moving to kneel between her thighs. I pushed her legs open wider. I could see her whole body stiffen. Christ, she was beautiful. Her ocean blue eyes were bright with unshed tears and wild with suppressed arousal. Her creamy skin had a delicate pink flush, as her breasts rose and fell with each frightened breath. She should be frightened. I felt the need to claim her as my own, to put my scent on her, my mark, seize her as my treasured possession, a demon stealing his piece of heaven. Yelena hissed through her teeth. The slight sheen of arousal glossed the soft curls between her legs.
My baby did a bad thing running away from me like that,
I chastised darkly. Yelena stayed silent, the hunted assessing the hunter.
I thought I made myself clear when I spanked this cute cunt of yours, Pink, that I wouldn't tolerate any more disobedience.
Using the back of my forefinger, I caressed her pussy. Up and down, up and down. Her breath caught as she fought her physical response to me. I don't take orders from you, she fired back. I smiled. Fuck, I love the fight in her.
That's very wrong, baby girl. I'm in charge now, and you will obey me.
Fuck you.
I think it's time I did something about that dirty mouth of yours,
I threatened as I rose up on my knees. Looking down at my fully engorged cock, Yelena threatened me back. Put that thing in my mouth and I'll bite it off. Grabbing her jaw again, I tilted her head back.
When I'm done with you, you'll be begging me to fuck your mouth.
The headboard thumped and rattled as Yelena tried once more to fight her wrist binds. Raising my hand, I gave her right tit a hard slap. She immediately stilled. a look of pure shock frozen on her face. Reaching over to the nightstand, I picked up one ice cube. I held it aloft over her open mouth, watching as the Scotch whiskey-soaked drops of ice water coated her lips. The tip of her small pink tongue flicked out to taste the smoky liquor. I moved to slide the cube over her right breast, tracing the crimson outline of my fingers which had marked her delicate skin. I then circled her pert nipple. "Stop, it's cold," she moaned as she bit her lip. I moved the ice over her belly, watching as the muscles of her abdomen twitched from the icy sensation. I met her eyes as I moved the ice cube lower. Elena began to shake her head. "No, Damien, no, I don't like this," she complained. "This is a punishment. You're not supposed to like it." I placed the softened, melted edge of the ice cube between her cunt lips, pressing it against her clit. Elena's hips pitched off the bed as she cried out. I placed my left hand on her stomach and forced her back against the mattress. "It's too cold. It hurts." I chuckled. "I think you enjoyed the heat of my spanking a little too much earlier. Time to try a different tactic." With that, I placed the melting cube at her tight entrance and pushed. The ice cube slid in deep with my finger. I could feel her muscles clench painfully around the icy intrusion. "Stop! It hurts!" screamed Elena, as she tried to twist her hips to escape the pain. Reaching over her, I picked up another ice cube. Her eyes widened. "Don't! Please don't!" she whispered plaintively. Ruthlessly, I pressed the ice into her cunt. Elena cried out as her whole body stiffened. I knew the ice was causing a special kind of pain, a clenching, tight, raw kind of agony, as her warm muscles contracted painfully from the cold touch. I picked up the third ice cube, holding it over her squirming body. I let the icy drops of water fall onto her flat stomach, a warning of what was to come. "Please, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry I ran away."
"Not good enough," I growled.
She needed to understand that each time she ran from me, each time she fought me, she put herself in greater danger. This time, I used the edge of the cube to part the folds of her cunt. I moved past her entrance to press it against the tight rosebud of her ass. "Don't, oh God, don't," she pleaded. I caressed her puckered entrance with the ice cube. Her butt cheeks clenched as her thighs tensed with her effort to close her legs. The watery slickness of the ice helped me push the cube into her dry, tight entrance. I knew this one would hurt far more than the ice in her pussy. Elena howled in pain as she pulled on her wrist binds.
"Why am I punishing you?"
I demanded. Elena didn't respond. I forced my finger into her pain-clenched asshole, the tip of my finger pushing the melting ice cube in further. I repeated,
"Why am I punishing you?"
Elena's breath came in frantic gasps. Finally, she blurted out,
"Because I was a bad girl."
"Did you disobey me?"
Elena nodded as she moaned. Her thighs pressed against my sides as she continued to try to close her legs to protect the delicate flesh I was abusing.
"Yes,"
she whispered, turning her head to the side to bury her face in the pillow. Tears coursed down the sides of her cheeks. I picked up the final ice cube. Elena whimpered. Reaching over her body, I grabbed her jaw and forced her to face me. Holding up the ice cube, I demanded,
"Tell me to punish you again. Tell me you deserve the pain. Tell me how you like it rough, baby. Ask me to make it hurt."
Her eyes pleaded with me, but I would not relent. My fingers pressed into her cheeks. I could feel the sharp edges of her teeth through the skin.
"Say it."
"Punish me, Damien. Punish me with the pain,"
she moaned. I pushed the final ice cube into her ass. Elena sobbed as the ebbing agony once more surged. Placing a hand near her shoulder, I leaned over her prone body. Reaching between her legs, I tried to push a finger into her chilled entrance. The muscles were clenched so hard from the cold, I could barely fit in the tip. Whispering in her ear, I asked,
"Do you know what my cock is going to feel like when I force it into this incredibly tight virgin cunt?"
Elena's eyes widened as she began to shake her head.
"Please, please don't. It'll kill me. You'll tear me in two."
I moved my finger down and teased her puckered asshole.
"Then how about here?"
"No, I don't. I've never. No."
I stared into her eyes, waiting. I could tell the very moment my intention dawned. Those beautiful blue eyes turned a striking shade of aquamarine. I watched the play of emotion from anger to desire to pride and finally to submission. "I'll suck your cock," she conceded, her voice hoarse from her tears. I said nothing, waiting. She got the message. Swallowing a sob, she entreated, "Please fuck my mouth." Leaning over, I ran my tongue over her upper and lower lips, wetting them before I rose up on my knees. Straddling her ribcage, I leaned up as I fisted my cock. "Say it again," I commanded. "Please fuck my mouth," she moaned. Grabbing the headboard with my left hand, I placed the head of my cock between her lips. "Open wider," I growled. She obeyed. I thrust my hips forward. My cock penetrated her mouth straight to the back of her throat. Elena gagged and began to struggle. I pulled back slightly and thrust forward again, feeling the head press slightly into her throat. Her muffled screams sent vibrations up my shaft, spurring me on. Gripping the headboard with both hands now, I leaned my hips into her, forcing her to swallow my entire length. "That's it, baby. I want to feel your nose against my stomach." I panted from the exertion of keeping myself in check from full tilt fucking her hot little mouth. I pulled free and allowed her one ragged gulp of air before I thrust again. I could feel the slide of her tongue on the sensitive underside of my cock. I bit back a groan as my balls tightened. I leaned back and gripped my cock, ruthlessly pumping my fist along the painfully hard length. My own breath came in harsh pants as I anticipated the moment I would come on her face and in her mouth. "Keep your mouth open," I demanded. I could feel beads of sweat trickle between my shoulder blades as I tightened my grip. Looking down at her flushed cheeks and bright eyes, her lips dark and swollen from the press of my flesh, was my undoing. With a roar, I felt the rush of release. A thick stream of warm, salty cum coated her lips and tongue. Still breathing hard, I leaned back. I placed my large hand over her pussy, warming it. Rubbing the edge of my palm against her clit, I pushed one finger into her. She was still tight and slightly chilled. "Lick my cum off your lips." Sliding my body down, I positioned myself between her open legs, my breath warming her cunt. Hesitantly, her tongue poked out between her lips. "That's right, baby. Lick it. Swallow it." Elena moaned as I forced a second finger into her cunt as my tongue flicked her clit. The heat of my skin and tongue was warming her, creating a beautiful extreme of sensations. Pleased, I stared up over her creamy expanse of skin as her tongue swept her lower lip, lapping up my seed. I thrust my fingers a little faster, swirling my tongue around her sensitive bud with the same frenetic rhythm. Her hips raised up. I could feel the brush of her inner thighs against my jaw. Her tongue flicked out to capture the last drop of my cum off her upper lip. Increasing the pressure and pace of my finger thrusts, I rose up over her body. Using my other hand, I grabbed a fistful of her hair. "You're mine now," I rasped, before capturing her lips in a savage kiss, tasting myself. The proof of my ownership on her lips as I penetrated her with a third finger. I swallowed the screams of her release.
Chapter 25. Yelena. I couldn't think straight. What had just happened? I barely even noticed when Damien released the straps on the padded wrist restraints. Tellingly, he kept the restraints themselves dangling from the headboard within easy reach. Sitting up, I watched as he grabbed the fluffy white down comforter which had been kicked to the floor. He returned to the bed. Sitting against the headboard, he wrapped his large hands around my ribcage and lifted me onto his lap. In my defense, I did let slip a small mew of protest, but in all honesty, I didn't put up much of a fight. There was just something about him. His strength. The palpable edge of danger. The way he didn't let me get away with any of my usual crap. It drew me like a moth to a flame. A very white-hot, angry, flame. I couldn't suppress a sigh when he wrapped the comforter around the two of us. I settled into his lap, even resting my head on his shoulder. I could feel the press of his cock against my hip as he reached for his glass of whiskey. Tilting the glass at my lips, he ordered,
Drink.
I scrunched my nose. I don't drink scotch.
You'll learn to. Now drink.
There was no point in fighting him. I drank. The burn had an oddly restorative effect. I leaned in to take another sip, but he pulled the glass away.
Easy, little one. Crawl before you walk.
He chuckled as he emptied the glass in one swallow. I watched the sinews of his neck, as if I could see the amber liquor slip down his throat. Fuck. There wasn't a damn thing about this man I didn't find sexy as hell. Even how he drank. There was a gentle pull on my scalp as Damien slipped his hand under my hair and pulled it free from the comforter. He smoothed the curls down my back. We sat there in silence. A temporary truce as I was soothed by the rhythmic caress of his hand. At one point, he pressed his hand against the side of my head as he leaned in to kiss my temple. Keeping his lips close, he whispered,
I'm never letting you go, baby.
I sighed. My time was up. Truth be told, I was out of options. It was clear I was not going to be able to escape Damien. It was also equally clear that if his intent had been to kill me, he could have easily done so back in my condo. Without looking up, I murmured, I know. I was expecting to feel the sickening feeling of impending doom, like a big, heavy door swinging shut, locking me in darkness. While he hadn't actually asked, and I hadn't really said yes, it was obvious he was talking about marriage. I should be feeling angry and trapped right now. In truth, I felt safe. For the first time in my life, I felt safe and warm and protected in his arms. Was this what it felt like to love and be loved? Were either of us even capable of that emotion? It seemed almost too tame and common of a word for whatever this fucked up thing we had between us was. This constant battle of wills. The need to push each other to the edge, to push each other's buttons. It was insane and twisted, but at the same time, it was exciting and wonderful. Pushing back a lock of hair which obscured his view of my profile, he asked,
Are you hungry?
I thought about saying no just to be petulant, but the truth was I was starving. The only thing I had eaten all day was an apple and a few bites of eggs. No wonder 2 glasses of wine had put me quickly to sleep, giving him the advantage when he snuck into my hotel room. Damien picked up the hotel phone and asked for room service. I listened as he ordered ravioli with a brown butter and sage sauce. Later, when Damien set me aside to throw on a pair of jeans and answer the door for room service, I felt oddly cold and vulnerable, immediately missing his heat and strength. After grabbing the plate, a cloth napkin, and a fork, he returned to the bed. I started to position myself on the mattress against the headboard, but a low rumbled growl from Damien had me changing course. Apparently, we had already gotten to the point where I understood his growled, wordless commands. Hiding a smile, I climbed back up onto his lap. Resting the bowl with the 3 large ravioli on the mattress, Damien halved one, swirled it in butter sauce, and held it up to my mouth. I can feed myself, you know.
Not while I'm around,
he said with a seductive wink. I opened my mouth and groaned as I chewed the creamy, savory bite. As he pulled the fork away, a dollop of melted butter sauce dripped onto the curve of my breast.
My turn to feast,
said Damien with a chuckle as he leaned over to lick the sauce off my skin. His cock was pressed between my hip and his stomach. I could feel it start to thicken and lengthen. It gave me a taboo thrill. Food was forgotten. I don't think I could have eaten another bite. My earlier hunger had been replaced by something far more primitive. A gnawing need to be possessed by this man. To be overpowered, held down, and taken. I was still untouched because I had never found a man who made me want to sacrifice my freedom for a moment in his arms. Never trusted someone to get that close to me. Until now. I wasn't sure if I could trust Damien with my heart, but I knew I could with my body. I wanted him, needed him. This. If just for now, just for this moment, I wanted to feel as though I belonged and was loved. Even if it was just a devilish illusion. Damien tossed the still full pasta bowl onto the nightstand and pivoted, pinning me beneath his weight against the mattress.
I can't wait any longer,
he growled. Chapter 26. Yelena. His hand easily spanned my slim thigh and forced my legs open. Shifting his weight, he placed his hips between my legs, pressing his already engorged cock against my core. It was both a threat and a promise. In that moment, I felt everything. The rough brush of his chest hair against my hard nipples. The warmth of his thigh pressed against my own. The feel of his slightly calloused fingers as they swept over my hip to grasp my breast. My back arched. His mouth descended to claim one pert nipple, pulling it deep into his mouth. The sharp scrape of his teeth had me grasping handfuls of the starched white linen sheets beneath us. He sucked hard, till I cried out in pleasurable pain before moving to the next nipple, giving it the same torturous attention. All the while, I could feel the press of his cock wedged between us. Damien moved to kiss my shoulder, skimming his lips along my collarbone. With the tip of his tongue, he traced my jaw till he reached my ear. He whispered to me in Russian as he flicked the soft shell with the tip of his tongue. I didn't have to understand the language to know they were dark, erotic words filled with even darker promise. His hand slipped between us to tease my clit, swirling the tip of his finger, testing my slick arousal before pushing it deep inside of me. I groaned and reached for him. Spanning my hands over his back, I ran my nails over his skin, rewarded with his deep, guttural growl and a push of his hips. Emboldened, I pressed my nails in harder, wanting to mark his skin as he had marked mine. Lifting up on his forearms, he threw his head back, exposing the thick cords of muscle on his neck and shoulders. His teeth clenched as he swallowed a groan from the feel of my claws on his back. Unable to resist, I leaned up and licked his skin, tasting him, loving the astringent sting of his cologne on my tongue. He gripped my hair and pulled my head back, breaking the contact.
Christ, baby girl. I'm not sure how much longer I can hold on.
Incapable of speech, I shifted my hips, grinding into his cock. He cursed again, this time in Russian, before pushing a second finger inside of me as he claimed my mouth. His tongue danced with mine, leading as I followed. He tasted of whiskey and warm butter. My arms reached up to caress his jaw with my hands. The harsh scrape of his stubble scratched against the soft skin of my palms. It felt so masculine, so him. My lips felt bruised and swollen as he ravaged my mouth, taking and giving. He pushed a third finger inside of me. I cried out. My body strained to stretch around the intrusion as he pulsed his fingers back and forth, opening me, preparing me. My toes curled, and I pushed my knees up, pressing my inner thighs against his hips. Damien leaned back. His sapphire eyes became dark and stormy. His left arm shifted higher, placing his forearm near my head. His hand reached out to cup my face as his thumb caressed my cheekbone. The 3 fingers of his right hand slowly pulled out of me and gripped my thigh, holding my legs open. I froze. My heart beat a chaotic cadence inside my chest. Despite the pleasure, I recoiled inside of myself. It was time. I knew it. We both knew it. This wasn't just about him taking my virginity. This was something deeper, the impact of which would define the rest of my life. This was a point of no return. Darkness crept along the edges of my vision. I feared I might faint. Unaware of my distress, or perhaps because of it, Damien threatened,
"There is no escaping me now. You will truly be my Padshi angel."
His fallen angel. Fallen into the arms of a demon. Him. Pressing against his shoulders, my voice was high-pitched with panic. "Wait!" His gaze narrowed as his jaw tightened. I could feel the tension and power radiating off his shoulders.
"No."
His knuckles pressed against my sensitive skin as he fisted his cock and brought the tip to my entrance. The tip nudged in just slightly. Scared, I tried to shift upwards and away. He shifted his left hand to grip my hair. Pulling sharply, he wrenched my head back as my body arched upward. The large, bulbous head slipped inside. Damien was breathing heavy. Leaning down, he growled against my lips.
"This is going to hurt."
My eyes widened. I tried to call out no, but the word was trapped in my throat. He lunged forward, spearing his thick flesh into me, tearing me in two. I screamed and began to buck and thrash. Damien subdued me with the power of his weight as he held my body, pinning it down. His hips moved, piercing me again and again, each thrust opening my body more. I felt every heavy inch of his cock as it moved inside of me. Damien captured my mouth, his tongue taking possession of me as effectively as his cock. His hips pounded into me with each thrust as he clasped my face between his large hands, stopping my head from thrashing from side to side.
"God damn it, Yelena. Don't you do this. Don't shut me out. Not now."
Tears slipped from the corners of my eyes as the shock of his words hit me. Taking advantage, Damien claimed my lips once more, but this time his kiss was more gentle, almost persuasive.
"Please, baby, open for me."
My mouth softened under his. He groaned and pressed his advantage, cupping my breast as his tongue swirled around my own. The sharp pain of him breaking through my maidenhead ebbed, eclipsed by a rising tide of pleasure. A throbbing pressure that increased with every thrust of his hips. It was as if I was trapped inside the notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. The way the music started with slow, dark determination and then built and built and built in intensity. The darkness rising like the coming of a storm. It ebbed and flowed on a whirling wind which spiraled and twisted. I no longer had any sense of self or awareness other than the power of the man on top of me, inside of me, claiming me. Unlike anything I had ever experienced before, fear mixed with pleasure as I clung to him, using his body to anchor my chaotic, swirling emotions. His strong arms wrapped around me tightly, holding me close as he drove into my body several more times, riding my climax to his own. With a roar, he filled me with his seed, binding us together. Afterwards, he insisted on getting me a warm washcloth. Wiping away the evidence did nothing to stop the tightening inside of my chest. I could still feel his hands on me, feel his weight holding me down, feel him inside of me. It was as if he had marked my soul, and the imprint of him would be with me forever, trapping me. Slipping into bed beside me, he wrapped his arms around my middle and pulled me close, my back to his front.
Stop,
he whispered into my ear after smoothing my wildly tangled hair aside. What? I could hear the smile in his voice as he continued.
Stop whatever is racing through that beautifully intelligent, chaotic mind of yours.
I bristled, my body tensing. I tried to pull out of his embrace, but his arm only tightened. After a moment, sure he had made his point, his arm shifted. His hand caressed my arm and hip in long, soothing strokes.
How about you don't think of it as being trapped?
He murmured against the nape of my neck. I started. It was as if he were reading my thoughts. I stayed silent.
How about we just worry about the next minute and the minute after that, and not let the entire future crash down on us all at once?
He offered. I played with the wrinkled tag that poked out from the pillowcase under my head. Does this mean you won't make me marry you? His hand stopped moving. The dark hair on his chest tickled the skin of my back as he took a long, deep breath.
No.
I turned and looked over my shoulder. No, you won't make me marry you? Or no, it doesn't mean that. His dark gaze bored down into mine. I could tell by the tightening of his jaw that I was trying his patience.
Would it be so terrible to rely on someone other than yourself for once? To actually trust that someone might care enough about you to want to protect you?
I turned away. I thought about how I'd once rambled to him that the song All by Myself was sampled from Rachmaninoff. That horribly morose ode to loneliness had become sort of a life anthem for me. I could hardly be blamed for not wanting to trust or rely on anyone. My own mother had taken her life, choosing death over me. The rest of my childhood had been spent dodging my stepfather's fists and being told I was useless and unwanted. I had been fending for myself for as long as I could remember.
When were you born?
He asked suddenly. I furrowed my brow, trying to figure out what his angle was in asking. Unable to decide, I answered, December 3rd.
What does that make you?
Make me?
Your zodiac sign.
Realization dawned. Oh, a Sagittarius.
And what is a Sagittarius like?
I traced the symbol of an archer's bow onto the sheet with the tip of my finger. My mother used to say that I was destined to dream big, chase the impossible, and take risks. That it was written in the stars. Damien shifted, pushing me onto my back as he loomed powerful and large over me. Leaning down, he kissed my shoulder, then the top of my breast.
And how compatible are a Sagittarius and a Scorpio?
Terrible, I said gleefully, my eyes widening as I warmed up to his change in subject. He frowned.
You're lying.
Nope, it's true. Scorpios are too darkly intense and controlling, forcing the more free-spirited Sagittarius to run away and chase their freedom. My lips twisted into a knowing smirk. Damien looked deep into my eyes.
Or maybe the Sagittarius brings light and a breath of fresh air into the Scorpio's rigid life. And instead of taking away her freedom, he becomes a rock. Something solid to affix her dreams to.
And just like that, I was completely, irrationally, stupidly in love. Damn him to hell for making me feel this way. I should have known better than to fall into the path of a stubborn Scorpio.
Chapter 27, Damien. I watched as Yelena's small nose scrunched in distaste as she picked her wrinkled pair of yoga pants and simple black hoodie up off the floor where she'd left them the night before. She cast a glance at a small suitcase with a designer dress tossed over the side. By the looks of it was about 2 sizes too big for her. It was probably best if I didn't ask too many questions as to how she had acquired it. It was clear my baby preferred her designer outfits. I was certain she only wore hoodies and yoga pants when she was running from me, since their innocuous appearance and maneuverability would be prized well above tailored but constricting designer clothes. With a resigned sigh, she stepped into the yoga pants. Leaving on my t-shirt, which I'd given her to wear last night, she pulled her hoodie over her head and reached for her sneakers. I liked the sight of her in one of my shirts. It felt strangely normal, like something a boyfriend and girlfriend would do. It was a funny thought. I had never really thought of myself in relationship terms, probably because I had never been in one. I didn't count fucking the occasional model and having them on my arm for the random social function as a relationship, more of a quid pro quo. Yelena was different. She'd always been different. From the moment I laid eyes on her on that dance floor, something inside of me changed. I thought it would pass over the years, but it had only grown stronger. Then when I saw her yesterday, it solidified, like a fist made of hot iron wrapping around my heart. It was solid and steadfast. My feelings for her were now not just a part of me, but the only breathing warmth in my body. When this is all over, I'll take you to Paris for the spring shawls. I'll escort you to Dior and Chanel and Yves Saint Laurent, and you can buy whatever you want. I offered as I tossed on my jeans. Although please no Gucci. I won't be able to pretend to like boring brown patterns with green or red or all that trashy gold. It really was adorable to see her eyes light up with excitement like a little girl just offered a treat. Then just as quickly, her look shuddered. Sticking her chin up in defiance, she huffed, "I'm perfectly capable of buying my own clothes." She had just put her long blonde hair up into a high ponytail, which made it convenient for me. Grabbing her ponytail, I looked down into her petulant, upturned face. "I'm using it where you can buy your own clothes. That isn't the point. From this moment forward, I want to be the one buying you things." I gave her ponytail a tug for emphasis. "Listen, just because you fucked me doesn't mean you own me," she snapped as she tried to break my grip. Placing my hand around her throat, I walked her backwards till her body flattened against the wall. Her small hands tried to wrap around my wrist and dislodge my grip. I pressed my hips against her stomach so she could feel the threat of my quickly hardening cock. Leaning in close, I stared suggestively first at her open mouth, then into her startled baby blue eyes. My voice was so low it was practically a growl. "Let's get something very straight. I do own you. I own this mouth, that tight pussy, and sometime in the very near future, that sweet ass of yours. You're mine. Run as often as you like. I'll find you each and every time and bring you back where you belong. You're never getting rid of me, beautiful. I suggest you get used to the idea." After giving her a hard kiss, I released her throat. She wisely stayed silent. I think we both knew if she dared contradict me, I would not hesitate to drag her over my knee and give her ass the spanking it so richly deserved. These weren't just words to me. I fucking meant every one of them. She was the woman for me. She aggravated the piss out of me, and I would probably wind up with more scars from her than from my enemies, but she would be worth every damn one of them. I wasn't some jackass Neanderthal who didn't know a good thing when it slapped him in the face. I knew I had found a beautiful little gem when Yelena crossed my path, and I had absolutely no intention of ever letting her go. From across the room, she watched as I tossed the wrist restraints into my bag. I walked over to the hotel bureau and also retrieved my wallet. There was a chortle that sounded very suspiciously like a laugh, which quickly turned into a cough from Yelena. I cast her a look which hopefully signaled I would not tolerate any mention of her easily lifting my wallet without my knowledge. Noticing my cell phone had died sometime last night, I grabbed the plug from my gym bag and started to charge it. It wasn't like me to let it die. I must have been too distracted by the painfully beautiful woman in my arms. I couldn't recall ever spending the night with the woman. Things got complicated when you spent the night. It sent a message I had no intention of ever sending, but with Yelena, it was heaven just holding her warm body in my arms, falling asleep to the soft sounds of her breathing. Yelena played with the strings of her hoodie. Without looking at me, she asked softly, "What about Natasha?" My eyes narrowed. What the fuck?
How do you know about Natasha?
Yelena nodded to the wallet in my hand. Of course, the photo. Shoving the wallet into my back pocket, I grabbed my gym bag and motioned for her to start heading toward the door.
Natasha is none of your business.
Yelena dug in her heels. That's not fair, and you know it. You expect me to suddenly just trust you, to suddenly just throw my lot in with yours, and you probably have a wife or girlfriend in Russia. I tossed the bag onto the bed and paced away, running a hand through my hair. I turned to see Yelena staring at me, arms crossed defensively across her chest. At least I could take small comfort in the fact that my baby girl was clearly jealous. It meant she wasn't as immune to my charms as she claimed. She obviously felt the same intense connection I did. Still, I did not want to talk about Natasha right now, but it looked like I didn't have a choice. Not if I wanted to get Yelena out of this hotel without half the lobby calling the police to report a kidnapping in progress.
Natasha was a friend of Gregor's and mine from college.
Yelena's mouth quirked up. She all but rolled her eyes. Oh, a friend?
Yes, a friend. More like a second sister. We lost her several years ago.
Yelena closed the distance between us and placed her hand on my arm. It was the first time she had touched me of her own accord, if you didn't count the knee to my knife wound, which I didn't. I'm sorry, Damien. I didn't know. I shrugged my shoulders, uncomfortable with showing this weak side of my past.
She fell in love with an asshole who got her addicted to cocaine. Every time Gregor and I dragged her away to get her clean, he would appear back in her life and get her hooked again. Realizing we would never get her clean if he was still in the picture, we took care of the problem. That's why Gregor was shipped off to Russia. The investigation into Natasha's boyfriend's death was hitting a little close to home.
I gave Yelena a hard look, certain I didn't have to spell out what I meant by taking care of the problem. She knew I meant we'd killed the bastard.
Unfortunately, it was too little too late. Natasha overdosed shortly afterwards.
Yelena rested her head against my chest as she wrapped her arms around my waist. I'm sorry, she repeated, her voice slightly muffled. I wrapped my arms around her shoulders. She was so small, it was like trying to hold a wild bird. Still, I took the comfort she offered.
Despite the outcome, I don't regret for a minute that asshole breathed his last in my presence. I protect those I care about, no matter the cost.
Stroking her back, I kissed the top of her head, hoping she realized I was talking about her too, before giving her ponytail a playful tug. Before I could press her again about marrying me for her own safety, my cell phone began to ping. As I crossed the room, there were several more pings as it came back online. A knot formed in my stomach. We kept our cell communication as minimal as possible, usually just quick conversations and never any text. Even after you deleted them, text left a record that could be accessed by law enforcement. There was a notification for several voicemails as well as texts.
From Gregor. Call me. We have a situation. Warehouse. Now.
From Dmitri.
At Gregor's. Cleanup necessary. Warehouse.
And Vaska.
Where is your location? Situation. Warehouse in 5. Blood.
I cursed as I pressed the button to listen to the voicemails. Yelena crossed the room to stand next to me. Fuck is a word I do know in Russian. Is everything okay? What happened? I wrapped a protective arm around her waist and pulled her close as I listened to Gregor's voicemail telling me about the attack on Samara. He was speaking in rapid-fire Russian, so I wasn't worried about her overhearing the substance, but she did pick up on the tone. Placing a hand on my chest, the light in her blue eyes dimmed as she asked, Is Samara okay? What happened? Setting the phone aside, I placed my hands on her shoulders.
Samara is fine.
She closed her eyes briefly and visibly relaxed. I hated to tell her more, but there was no point in keeping it from her. She would learn the details soon enough. She was attacked last night. 3 men broke into Gregor's home. Her eyes flooded with tears. Her small hands gripped the fabric of my shirt over my upper arms. What? Is she hurt? I shook my head. Gregor reached her in time. Her hand covered her mouth. Oh my God, oh my God! Her knees buckled. Leaning down, I swept her into my arms and carried her over to the bed. Sitting down, I settled her on my lap. Rubbing soothing circles over her back, I kissed her temple. Shh, baby, it's fine. She's okay. She's not hurt. Elena began to rock back and forth in my arms. This is all my fault. It's all my fault. My hand stilled. For just a moment, I considered letting her believe that. If she thought the attack was by the Colombians, then maybe she'd finally listen to me and realize she was in danger. Maybe she'd stop fighting me at every turn and accept my protection. As soon as the idea formed, I discarded it. I had never lied to her, and I wasn't about to start now. Lying was for weak cowards who didn't have the strength to back up their own words. Gripping her chin with my thumb and forefinger, I forced her gaze to mine. No, it's not. She tried to wrench her face away. You're just saying that to make me feel better. Baby, I don't lie. It's not your fault. The attack was by another Russian family, the Novikovs. The Novikovs? I know them. My stepfather used to drink with one of their bodyguards, Pavel Roskovich, a real asshole who couldn't keep his hands to himself. As if it were yesterday, I remembered Pavel touching her on the dance floor at Nadia's party. I'd wanted the man dead then, and apparently last night I got my wish. Well, he's dead now. Did the Novikovs attack her because of Gregor? The simple question was like a punch to the gut. Although the answer was no, it could so easily have been yes. It was a stark reminder that while I was offering Elena the safety and protection of my name, it was a double-edged sword. It might protect her from the monsters seeking her, but wouldn't protect her from my monsters. I lived a dangerous life full of dangerous, immoral people. Was what I was offering her really any safer? My whole body rebelled at the thought. I had to believe she was at least safer in my arms, sheltered by my name, money, and strength, than out in the world alone and vulnerable. Sure, she had made it this far, but for how long? It was only a matter of time before someone got to her. If it wasn't the Colombians, it would be the Italians or worse. My motives may not have been pure, but neither was the world we lived in. At least I was the devil my angel knew. Can I talk to her? Not just yet. Soon. But she's okay. Yes, baby. She's safe and unharmed. I'll explain it all in the car. For now, we need to get out of here. I would wait till later to explain to her how the voicemail also mentioned how my brother forced them to marry the moment they landed in D.C. No point in putting ideas in her head. I needed to get her on a plane in a few hours, and that would never happen if she thought I was planning to do the same, which was in fact precisely what I was planning. I even had the same damn judge lined up. Elena nodded and rose to finish dressing. I gave Vaska a quick call. In Russian, we made plans to meet at Dimitri's. His house had a helipad on the roof and a helicopter they would let me use. Although we were close to O'Hare, private planes left out of Midway. With morning rush hour traffic, it would take far too long to get across the city and to the south side by car. A helicopter would be faster. By the time we arrived, the Ivanov private plane would have finished making the round trip from Washington, D.C. back to Chicago. Where are we going? She asked as I ushered her out of the room. First to Dimitri's. Gregor and Samara caught a private plane out of town a few hours ago. We're going to do the same. I'm taking you home to D.C. She nodded. Okay, she answered softly, her head bowed, her face hidden behind a curtain of golden blonde hair. I sighed. The news of Samara's attack must have really rattled her if she was agreeing with me without a fight. It felt cruel to think it, but I was pleased. Although I was forgetting that it had been an extremely long and stressful 24 hours for my baby. Starting with my return into her life and ending with a bout of intense sex. I also remembered that she hadn't eaten much of the ravioli before I selfishly decided I wanted a taste of sweeter fare. I don't think you ate enough. We'll grab some food on the way. Her voice trembled slightly, probably from exhaustion. Can I get a Happy Meal? I don't have the little Bo Peep from Toy Story yet. I caressed her cheek with the back of my hand. Whatever my baby wants. Except for her freedom. She was truly mine now, and I was keeping her, no matter the cost.
Chapter 28. Yelena. Damien's friend Dmitri lived in a massive sandstone house in Lincoln Park just off of Burling Street. Before Damien could raise the ring in a massive bronze lion's teeth to knock, the glossy black door swung open. A large man equal in size to Damien answered the door. I recognized him as the man I saw in the safe house yesterday. He was just as intimidating with a dark, intently brooding look to his face and tattoos which covered his hands and crept up his neck. The fact that he smiled in greeting as he called out Damien's name did nothing to change my opinion. He still looked scary as fuck. I edged closer to Damien, feeling better when he placed a protective arm around my waist and pulled me into his side. I raised my head to look up at him. He caught my gaze and gave me a reassuring wink before greeting his friend.
Yelena, this is my friend, Vasily Lukovich Rostov. Please, call me Vaska.
It wasn't until we were inside the magnificent ivory marble entranceway that I noticed there was a woman standing slightly behind him. She was beautiful. Her impossibly shiny ink-black hair was done up in that super cool rockabilly victory roll style with big glossy curls. It was then held back by a classic bright red bandana. She had on a cute boat neck, dark blue and white striped sailor shirt, and dark jeans with wide cuffs. Her whole look was pulled together with matte red lipstick over a serious Angelina Jolie pout. Feeling self-conscious, I smoothed the wrinkles down on the front of my hoodie, wishing I at least had my Chanel lipstick to put on.
And this is Mary.
Hello. When she raised her arm to wave, I was astonished to see Vaska's arm rise as well. They were handcuffed together. I turned wide eyes up to Damien, but he seemed to not even notice. To not notice his friend was handcuffed to a woman.
You heard Gregor is already back in D.C.?
Asked Damien as if nothing was amiss. Vaska nodded.
Dmitri has taken Emma to a secure location just to be on the safe side till things calm down. I've already called for a helicopter to take you to Midway. It should be arriving any minute now.
Damien clapped him on the back.
Thank you, my friend. I'm sorry we have caused so much trouble in your city this visit.
Vaska laughed.
Things were getting boring with only the Petrov brothers to kick around. Besides, we owed you for your help with that Morocco mess.
Seriously? Was no one going to even mention the handcuffs? I'm sorry, but I started, but Damien squeezed my side and gave me a warning look. I narrowed my eyes and shot him a warning look right back. He couldn't honestly think I wasn't going to say something. Vaska pulled on his arm, which jerked Mary forward slightly. She pulled right back.
Mary has decided to stubbornly refuse my protection.
Because Mary can take care of herself and doesn't need an overbearing Russian barging into her life, barking orders, responded Mary in a sarcastic, almost sing-song tone before her gorgeous red lips twisted into an angry pout. A quick burst of laughter escaped Damien's lips, and he patted his own chest as if he had just coughed. My cheeks burned. The parallels to our own situation were unmistakable. Damien raised an eyebrow and looked down at me.
Perhaps I should have kept those handcuffs.
Mary, if you need any tips on how to easily pick a handcuff lock, let me know, I said through clenched teeth.
Just make sure you don't need to do it quietly or quickly, or you're fucked,
fired back Damien. My mouth dropped open at the insult to my lockpicking skills. You don't, by any chance, have a gun on you, do you? Mary asked me before turning to innocently bat her long black eyelashes at Vaska. Before I could respond, The vibrating hum of an engine and the thwap, thwap, thwap of what I could only assume were helicopter blades sounded overhead.
"Looks like your ride's here,"
said Vaska cheerfully, as if the woman he was handcuffed to hadn't just requested a firearm.
"Damien, you know the way?" "I do. Take care of your own affairs."
With an arm around my waist, he led me to the curved staircase. I tugged against his grasp. Wait, shouldn't we help her? Damien cast a look over his shoulder.
"Why? She's safe with Vaska."
"She's here against her will." His large shoulders shrugged.
"Technically, so are you."
I stopped. He had a point. Placing a finger under my chin, his sapphire gaze darkened.
"And despite being lifelong friends, if he tried to interfere and take you from me, I would kill him in a heartbeat. I would expect no less from him as well."
The intensity and sincerity of his response took my breath away. I actually believed he would kill his friend if he tried to rescue me.
"Trust me, Angel. Vaska is only trying to protect her."
Where had I heard that before? Casting a quick look over my shoulder, I saw Vaska fiercely kissing Mary. Damien guided me up the stairs. I caught only a glimpse of a sumptuous bedroom decorated in cream and gold before we climbed a second staircase. Large French doors opened onto a furnished rooftop terrace with large lounge chairs and an open fire pit. At the far end, a sleek black and red helicopter had just landed gracefully onto the raised helipad. Despite the chaotic and scary circumstances, I was actually pretty excited. I'd never ridden in a helicopter before. I imagined it would be terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, like a roller coaster ride. A man dressed in all black with a matching black helmet and sunglasses covering his eyes hopped out of the pilot's side and swung open the back door, motioning for us to enter.
"Let's go,"
Damien called out over the din of the helicopter engine and still spinning propellers. Grasping my long ponytail so my hair wouldn't fly around more than necessary, I ran toward the helicopter, ducking low as I neared the spinning blades even though they were several feet over my head. Someone called out Damien's name. I turned to see Vaska and Mary both running across the rooftop. Damien motioned with his arm for me to continue onto the helicopter as he turned to see what Vaska wanted. The pilot grasped my hand and helped me inside. It took my eyes a moment to adjust to the dim enclosed interior. When they did, I was startled to see a second person inside just across the narrow leather seat from me. The seat was only long enough for 2 people. I assumed Damien would take the seat next to the pilot up front and was a little disappointed he wouldn't be directly by my side for the experience. I immediately chastised myself for this silly thought. What? I have sex with the guy once, and he says something insanely romantic about our compatible zodiac signs, and now all of a sudden I couldn't bear to be parted from him, even for a minute like some doe-eyed teenager? Apparently, I was forgetting that yesterday I was throwing knives at him and hitting him with a brick. Or that for the last 3 years, he and his brother had been ruthlessly chasing me and my best friend down from one end of the country to the other. Giving myself a mental shake, I pushed all these thoughts away. There would be plenty of time to analyze to death my conflicted and confused feelings for Damien once I was back in D.C. with Samara. Once I knew she was okay, then I could decide what my next step and future was, and whether Damien was included in my plans. Because after all, just because he said we were still getting married didn't mean I was going to say yes. I turned at Damien's shout. My brow furrowed. He was yelling and racing toward the helicopter. The pilot swung the door shut and hopped back into the pilot's seat. "Wait, what are you doing?" I exclaimed. Damien reached the door and pulled on the handle, but it didn't budge. Lunging for the door to open it myself, I was wrenched back by an arm around my throat. The silent person who had been seated behind me stretched his arm past my head. He was holding an ominous-looking handgun. My gaze locked with Damien's through the scuffed and dirty helicopter window. The horror reflected in his eyes froze my blood. Terrified, I struggled against my captor's grasp. I screamed as he fired several shots through the glass. The bullets penetrated and caused cracks to radiate from the hole, but didn't shatter the glass. Given that it was Dmitri and Vaska's helicopter, it must have some type of bulletproof glass. At this close range, the bullet would still penetrate, but hopefully the glass and layers of plastic in between slowed it down enough not to harm Damien or the others. Just then, the entire helicopter shook as we began to rise into the air. "Damien!" I screamed as I clawed at the arm around my neck. The helicopter pitched sharply on its side, sending me tumbling to the floor before I slammed my shoulder against the door. "He's on the landing skids!" shouted the pilot as he struggled to control the helicopter. He had a heavy Spanish accent. "Shake him loose!" cried the man who'd held me around the throat. Again, with a Spanish accent. Oh my God. My entire body went cold. Realization dawned. The engine whined and strained at whatever maneuver the pilot was trying, but suddenly the helicopter righted itself. I threw myself against the door, peering through the radiated cracks in the glass. I saw Damien getting smaller and smaller as we rose into the air. Even from this distance, I could see the tortured expression on his face. As Vaska closed in on Damien, he tossed a black object that looked like a gun to him with his free hand. Damien caught it and turned. Swinging his arm to the right, it looked like he intended to fire at the tail of the helicopter to try and take out the engine. But it was too high in the air by now, and the risk to me was too great. It was too late.
Chapter 29. Damien. Snatching the manager by the front of his coat, I swung him violently around and slammed his body against the glass partition. The back of his head bounced against the window, shattering it. Sharp shards of glass cascaded over both of our shoulders. "I don't know his name." Foamy bits of white spittle had formed in the corners of the man's mouth. "You're fucking lying. I want his fucking name," I ground out. "I don't know it." Pulling my arm back, I landed a punch against the man's left ribcage. Feeling the thin bones crack under the force of my fist, I punched him a second time in the same spot. This time the bone splintered. I could hear the sickening crunch. The man started to gasp for breath and wheeze as the broken rib bone punctured his lung. His knees buckled. Grabbing him by the shirt front, I yanked him to his feet and pulled him within inches of my face. "Listen to me, you piece of shit. I will beat you to death with my bare hands, methodically breaking every bone in your useless body, unless you tell me what I want to know." The man drew a ragged, wheezing breath. "They'll kill me. So will I fired back. "But I guarantee it will be more painful than anything they would do to you." Yelena had been gone now for 43 minutes. 43 agonizing, soul-crushing minutes. For the rest of my life, the look of sheer terror on her beautiful face would haunt my dreams. I had failed her. Again. I hadn't protected her when she was a vulnerable little girl needing my help, and now, after swearing to keep her safe from the Colombians, it was me who had led them straight to her. If I lived for 1,000 years, nothing I ever did would assuage my guilt. How could I have been so complacent, so stupid, as to let her get on that helicopter without verifying who the pilot was? Blad. As Yelena headed toward the helicopter, Vaska and Mary had run toward me, but I couldn't make out what they were yelling over the din of the engine. It was only when I got closer that I realized they were screaming stop. Without even finding out why, I turned and ran with all my might to reach Yelena, but I was too late. They shut the doors, trapping her inside. In desperation, I latched on to the landing skids. It had been my intention to pull myself up and somehow force my way into the helicopter cab, but I was thrown off. When Vaska tossed me a gun, I knew it was dangerous to try and shoot it down, but it was a risk I had to take. I knew what the Colombians were capable of. I knew all the torturous, dehumanizing things they wouldn't hesitate to do to her. It was worth the risk. I knew I clipped the tail, but it wasn't enough to stop the helicopter. I had to stand and watch in horror as it climbed higher and higher into the sky, taking my baby girl with it. Raising both arms, my fists pressed against my temples, I roared with pain and anger into the swirling wind created by the retreating, spinning blades. When Vaska placed his hand on my shoulder, I turned on him like a rabid dog. I was out of my mind with grief and anger. I didn't even see that Mary was still handcuffed to him. My attack on him made her trip and fall painfully to the ground, injuring her shoulder. Vaska responded like a man possessed. I twisted my jaw to the side. It still ached where Vaska was forced to haul off and punch me to get me back to my senses. It was the least that I deserved. "What the fuck happened?" I finally asked. Holding Mary close to his side, Vaska reached into his back pocket for the handcuff keys while he told me, "I got a call from John. He's our usual helicopter pilot. He's provided by the service we use to store and maintain it when it's not in use. We have an understanding with the management because of the special circumstances of our business dealings that John and only John flies our bird. After doing a final check, his boss called him into the office. Next thing he knew, another pilot was taking off. The boss acted real cagey about why, so John called to warn me. Address," I growled, more beast than man right now. My only thought was of Yelena. The thin veneer of civilization slid off me like water, replaced by a single primal need to find my mate. Vaska nodded. "I need to secure Mary someplace safe. Then we'll go." I shook my head. "I can't wait that long. You don't know what you're walking into there. We haven't even confirmed who's involved. They could still have a team of men on premises. It's them, I know it. They have her, Vaska, and it's my fucking fault. Do what you have to do to protect your girl, but I'm not waiting one fucking second to go after mine." Cradling her arm against her middle, Mary protested. "I'm not his girl, and I'm fine. Go with him." We both ignored her. As far as I was concerned, if Vaska wanted her protected, that was enough for me. "I'll text you the address. I'm taking Mary to where Dmitri has Emma." He turned and gave her a harsh glare when she started to protest. "After you learn all you can, meet us at the usual place. We'll gear up with some firepower and go after the bastards." Less than half an hour later, I was at the private hangar. John, warned of my coming, met me in the parking lot and pointed out where his boss could be found. The rat bastard was sitting at a desk stuffing his face with a sloppy Italian beef as if everything was normal. As if he hadn't just sent a woman to her death because of his greed. My boots crunched over a piece of shattered glass as I dragged him deeper into the office. Reaching into my back waistband, my fingers wrapped around the grip of my Glock, I pulled it free. Placing the muzzle against his left eye, I asked him, "What are their names?" "I can't," he squealed. Lowering the gun, I shot him in the kneecap. His considerable bulk fell to the ground as he screamed in agony. A random employee appeared in the doorway. I raised my gun. "This is none of your business." The employee looked like they were going to protest, but then John appeared and dragged them away with a nod in my direction. I knew he would take care of it, and at the very least, hold back anyone calling the police till I left. He would be rewarded for his loyalty. Touring my attention back to the bleeding pig at my feet, I warned, "The next shot goes in your stomach." He held one bloody hand palm up in a placating gesture. "He didn't tell me his name, but we've flown for his boss several times before. The boss owns a horse stable in Oak Park." "The name?" "They'll kill me," he whined again. "You're already dead." Santiago Garcia. He paid me to let them know when Dmitri or Vaska ordered their helicopter to be ready. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't know they were going to steal it." I swallowed down the bile which rose in the back of my throat. Unlike with the Italians, I had never been able to arrange a meeting with the Colombians to sort out the misunderstanding of Yelena and pay them off, because I could never find out which gang or faction was involved. Unlike with the Italians, and occasionally with us Russians, they were rarely organized by family, which made them more fragmented with less of a hierarchy. There always seemed to be someone new in charge. Santiago Garcia was the current head of the Los Infieles, the unfaithful. I had already had a run-in with him a few months ago when he tried to renegotiate the price of some German G3 rifles, Israeli Galils and Uzis, and US M16s we had acquired for him. We never renegotiate. His threats of retaliation for my disrespect to him in front of his men meant nothing to me. So this explained why, after a year and a half of silence, the chatter about the Colombians searching for Yelena had turned into such a frenzy. I thought it was because she had become active again in some of the major races. It had nothing to do with her. This was about me. Santiago was getting his revenge against me. He must have learned of my connection to Yelena. They had probably been tracking me this entire trip. They had taken a chance I might use the helicopter, and I had played right into their fucking hands. It would only be a matter of time before he realized her part in the Pick Six scheme, which had been robbing his tracks blind these past 3 years. Fuck. John appeared in the doorway. Cops are at the front gate. I have a buddy holding them back, but not for much longer. You got the way out of here? He nodded. I'll make it worth your while. He smiled. I know what I signed up for. Bert is gassed and ready when you are. He gave a pointed look to the moaning man at my feet before leaving. His boss sniveled. I told you what you wanted to know. You don't have to kill me. That's where you're wrong. I fired a single shot straight into his temple. He had to die. They would all die. Anyone who harmed my Yelena was about to find out how I earned the nickname Demon.
Chapter 30. Yelena. The fear and adrenaline pumping through my veins made my head spin. I wrapped my arms tightly around my middle, clutching my stomach, scared I would throw up as the helicopter raced over the tops of the city's skyscrapers. Through the window, I could see the cold gray waters of Lake Michigan. Whitecaps churned as the waves crashed against the rocky shore. Should I try and jump? It would be my death, but that would be preferable to what probably awaited me when we landed. I had heard the gruesome stories from my stepfather and his cronies. Sitting around my mother's old kitchen table, letting their cigarette butts burn nasty char marks in the varnish as their sweaty, cheap beer cans left hazy watermarks, they would compare notes on who was more ruthless, the Russians or the Colombians. As a little girl, the things I overheard gave me nightmares. No, I had to stop thinking this way. Damien would rescue me. He would move heaven and hell to get to me. I was sure of it. I'd never trusted a man in my life before now, but I trusted Damien. I more than trusted him. I love him. The man drove me crazy. He was such a typical Scorpio, far too controlling and pushy, and, according to my sign, we shouldn't be the least bit compatible, but none of that mattered. I love him. I loved how he had the same sarcastic sense of humor as me. I loved that he loved classical music. Or how, despite being this big thug Russian with tattoos, he could rattle off all the most popular high-end Parisian designers. I loved how he kept a photo of his old school friend in his wallet and how he and his brother did everything they could to try and save her from herself. Just like he tried to save me from myself the night of Nadia's birthday party. I should have listened to him then. I should have taken a risk and trusted that maybe, for once, someone was trying to help me instead of hurt me. Maybe then I wouldn't have dragged poor Samara from city to city and country to country these last few years, convincing her to stay by my side because I was too afraid to face life on my own. Damien was dangerous and lived in a world I desperately wanted to leave behind, but I no longer cared about any of that. He was also sexy and funny, and for the first time in my life I felt safe and protected in his arms. Right at this moment, I wanted nothing more than to feel those strong arms around me. Wanted to feel his lips against my forehead as he called me his angel. Wanted to hear him gruffly tell me everything was going to be okay. I had to hold on to the feeling that he was coming for me. No matter what happened, I had to stay alive. I owed him that much. I owed him my trust that he would save me. We left the city behind. Soon there was nothing but large suburban housing developments and strip malls below. Then even those were left behind for large, sweeping fields of corn and grass. We must be heading west, deeper into the farmlands of Illinois. The helicopter slowed and hovered over one such property. It had a large white manor house and a classic red barn. There was also a horse paddock and a long rectangular structure which looked to be a horse stable. The helicopter kicked up a cloud of dirt and sand as it landed in a field nearby. Several horses in the paddock started to stomp their hooves and race about in a frenetic circle. A group of men with automatic weapons strapped to their shoulders hunched down and ran toward us. The door swung open. A gloved hand wrapped around my upper arm and dragged me out. I tripped and fell. The small stones dug into my palms, scraping them. Cursing in Spanish, a man pulled me back to my feet by my ponytail. Balling my right hand into a fist, I swung out, clocking him on the jaw. The man by his side approached. I kicked out, catching him in the stomach. That was as far as I got before two men snatched my arms from behind. I coughed on the cloud of dust and dirt as I was dragged across the open field to a pair of large, hunter-green wooden doors with white trim. Both swung open as we approached. I had to squint as my eyes adjusted from blinding sunlight to the shady interior. It smelled musty, like moldy hay and horse manure. I was forced to march forward, and we stopped before a short, well-groomed man. He stood before me in a rather garish, off-the-rack purple pinstriped suit. At first, he didn't say a word, just spun the gold ring on his pinky finger. After inhaling a breath through his small, rat-like nose, he finally spoke in a heavy Spanish accent. Yelena Nikitina, it is a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard many interesting things about you and your prowess at the track. I remained silent. Where are my manners? He said genially, as if we were at a party and he had neglected to introduce me to the host. My name is Santiago Garcia, and I believe you and I have a mutual acquaintance. I thrust my chin out and spoke brazenly, with more bravado than I felt. I don't know what you're talking about. He smiled. One of his teeth was gold-capped. It made his demeanor seem even more false, more caricature than man. Let me show you my babies. With a firm grip on both of my upper arms, I was forced to walk behind him deeper into the stable. He gestured to the various horses stalled on either side. They were all beautiful, all with glossy black or chestnut coats, several with shocks of white on their noses, all obviously expensive thoroughbred stock. He leaned over one stall to pet the nose of a horse that poked its head out to greet him. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a few sugar cubes and held them on his flat palm for the horse to eagerly lap them up. Isn't she gorgeous? This beauty is going to win me a nice purse in the sham stakes this year. I looked at the horse with sympathy. The poor thing. More than likely, he was pumping her full of steroids, and then, on race day, he would force a milkshake down her nose. It was an awful practice of forcing a tube into a horse's nose and then down into its stomach, where they would pump a mixture of bicarbonate soda, sugar, water, and electrolytes into it. It prevented the buildup of lactic acid in the muscles, so the horse would literally run itself to injury or worse, death. I should know. My bastard stepfather was one of the men who used to torture horses with the concoction as part of his side job to fix races. Santiago continued deeper into the darkness of the stable. As we approached the last stall, I could hear a man groaning. My stomach twisted. Oh my God. Damien. Please, God, tell me they hadn't captured Damien. My steps faltered, but the men holding me kept me marching forward. Right before we reached the stall, there was another pitiful groan. A few more steps, and we were standing at the opening to the stall. I closed my eyes, unable to bear looking.
Miss Nicotina, may I introduce Geraldo Gomez?
My eyes flew open. My knees almost buckled. Thank God it wasn't Damien. The man lying on his side among the dirty hay and filth looked like no more than a pile of rags. Dried blood was matted in his hair, and one eye was swollen shut. As he rose onto his knees, it was clear, the way his left hand hung limply at his side, that either it or his arm had been broken.
Please, Mr. Garcia, I'll pay it all back. I swear, please.
Once more twirling the large gold signet ring on his pinky finger, Santiago turned to me.
Like you, Mr. Gomez here thought I wouldn't mind him stealing money from my pocket. He thought I wouldn't notice a few fixed races off the books.
I never stole anything. I never fixed any races, I objected. Santiago stepped close. I hissed as he rubbed the back of his hand down my cheek. The ring on his finger was cold against my skin.
You will only anger me by denying what we both know is true. I would advise against that, he said softly. Things will get ugly if you anger me further.
Goosebumps rose on my flesh. Santiago stepped back and motioned to some of his men who were standing nearby. Swinging their rifles to their backs, they stepped inside the stall and grabbed Geraldo by the arms. He cried out in pain when the one touched his broken left arm. They hefted him high and pulled him backwards till he was propped against the far wall. Another henchman stepped forward and handed Santiago a large, ominous-looking power tool.
So many people think that stealing from a racetrack is a victimless crime,
he said, shaking his head. Lifting the power tool, he aimed it at Geraldo and pulled the trigger. With horror, I realized it was a nail gun. A long steel nail hit Geraldo in the fleshy part of his right underarm, pinning him to the back of the wood stall wall. I tried to turn my head away, but one of the men holding me snatched my ponytail and forced my head up and straight.
They do not think about the cost to me and my family.
He fired the gun again, and then again, each time striking Geraldo in the arms or legs. The man's screams almost drowned out Santiago's next words.
You must understand, Miss Nicotina. I am only a humble businessman trying to make a small profit.
Geraldo was sobbing as the nails pierced his limbs. By now, so many had struck him that the two henchmen no longer needed to support him. He was being held up by the nails in his own flesh.
This is something Damien Ivanov did not understand when he cheated me on a recent transaction of ours. I don't appreciate being cheated, Miss Nicotina. It sets a bad example to my men and makes me very angry.
So this wasn't just about me. It was about Damien as well. This was bad. Really bad. I realized with a sick feeling that the best thing would be for Damien not to find me. He would only be risking his own death if he tried. I wet my dry lips. Santiago had said he was a businessman. Maybe I could make a deal with him. I inhaled a shaky breath. I'll tell you all you need to know. I'll teach you my betting scheme. It's really just a simple category forecasting algorithm. You won't need to bother with fixing races anymore. I'll tell you everything, just don't hurt Damien. Santiago grasped the end of my ponytail. For several agonizing minutes, he didn't say anything, just stroked my hair. I swallowed the bile in my throat, repressing the urge to pull away from his slimy touch.
You really are a beauty. Damien Ivanov was a lucky man.
Please, we can make a deal. He smiled. His gold-capped tooth glinted even in the dim light of the stable.
You don't understand the rules of business very well, Miss Nicotina. There is no reason for me to make a deal. I will already be taking whatever I want from you,
he said, as he pulled painfully on my hair and stared at my mouth. Just then, a groomer approached with a horse.
You asked for Satan's spawn to be brought out, Mr. Garcia. Yes, put him in the stall,
ordered Santiago without taking his snake eyes off me. The man moved the horse into the stall, shifting it around till he was facing us with his hindquarters crowding against the pitiful limp form of Geraldo, who still whimpered and pleaded for his life. Santiago placed his hand under my chin, painfully digging his fingers into my jaw.
You are about to see what I have planned for your beloved Mr. Ivanov.
One of his men stepped forward. Taking a stiletto knife out of his pocket, he flicked it open, then stabbed the poor horse in the flank with the sharp blade. The horse whinnied and shrieked. First, it reared up on its hind legs, but then it began to kick its back legs in anger and pain. My eyes were wide with terror as I screamed and fought Santiago's grip. Both he and his men held firm. The sickening sounds of bones cracking echoed around the stable as the horse's back hooves pounded over and over into Geraldo's already damaged body. Santiago shifted position, dragging me with him so that I was forced to stare upon the bloody mess that used to be a human being. The force of the beating had torn his body off the nails. It now was nothing more than a trampled heap of blood and bones on the stall floor, pounded into the dirt and shit. Just as I thought I might faint from the horrible sight, Santiago viciously slapped me across the face. My ears rang with the echoes of the dying man's screams.
It's best you prepare yourself now. Soon, that will be Damian Ivanov lying in there, he viciously taunted.
Just the thought of my handsome, strong Damian being kicked to death by a horse and left to die among the piles of dung made me want to die too. My stomach lurched. I gagged. This time I didn't even try to stop it. Surging forward, I choked out bile onto his shiny alligator shoes. Disgusted, Santiago stepped back.
Take the bitch away. Lock her in one of these stalls.
I was dragged off to a nearby empty stall and tossed onto a pile of moldy hay where they wrenched my left arm high. Clapping handcuffs around my wrist, they then attached the second cuff to an iron ring secured to a cement column set in the wooden wall. Both men stood over me. One gave my leg a hard kick. I stifled a groan.
Think the boss will give us a go at her once he's done with her?
The other one laughed and slapped his friend on the shoulder.
By the time the boss is done with her, you won't want anything to do with her. Trust me.
They both laughed. Leaving the stall, they closed and locked the high-gated door. I curled my knees into my chest and rested my forehead on my knees. Tears ran down my cheeks. Misery washed over me. Part of me wished I could feel Damian's arms around me right now. And another part of me desperately wished I'd never lay eyes on him again. At least that way I knew he would be safe. I thought of Damian's dark sapphire eyes and how they always shone with stubborn resolve. A spark of hope lighted deep inside of me I had forgotten. He was a Scorpio, the bad boy of the zodiac signs. Intense and extremely powerful, nothing and no one ever got the better of a fiercely determined Scorpio. Especially not my Russian badass Scorpio. Feeling my feisty Sagittarius nature start to come back to the fore, I took a deep, calming breath. Despite the pain in my cheek from Santiago's slap, I managed a slight smile. Suddenly, I was a little sorry for Santiago and his men. They had no idea the hellfire that was about to rain down on them once Demon Damien Ivanov found me. And he would find me. I had no doubt. All I had to do was hang on till then.
Chapter 31. Damien. 5 hours, 26 minutes, and 42 seconds. That was how long Yelena had been held captive. It was 5 hours, 26 minutes, and 42 seconds too long. "Target confirmed," said Dmitri, as he handed me the high-powered binoculars. We were about 700 yards away on a high ridge which looked down into the sheltered valley where Santiago Garcia's Los Infiles controlled a thoroughbred farm. Looking through the binoculars, I couldn't spot Dmitri and Vaska's stolen red and black Instrom 280FX Shark helicopter, but that didn't matter. I had called in a few favors, and Russian military satellite footage confirmed the helicopter had been here less than an hour ago. Only the pilot was seen departing, which meant Yelena should still be on property. Based on the number of armed guards stationed around the stable, it was our best guess she was being held there. I prayed to God she was still alive. Either way, anyone responsible for her kidnapping was dying today. Vaska pulled his Barrett M82 sniper rifle out of its case. He opened the base and arranged several sandbags to stabilize it. It was an anti-material rifle whose ammunition could take down any small aircraft. It could also penetrate through a concrete wall. He connected the 10-round attachable magazine and placed several back up within easy reach. He checked the scope, then nodded to us both. Pulling out my 2 Glock 17s, I clicked a double-stack 33-round high-capacity magazine into each gun and chambered the first round. I then tucked 4 more magazines into the lower leg pockets of my black cargo pants. Dmitri did the same. Since we would be coming in hot, we needed a gun that was reliable and light with semi-automatic striker fire capability. There was none better than the Glock 17. Vaska nodded to the Escalade parked about 25 yards from the stable entrance. "As soon as you reach the crest, I'll start laying down suppression fire. When you're close enough, I'll hit the gas tank, so watch for the big bomb." Dmitri tossed me a red bandana. We each tied one around our necks. I tucked an extra one into my back pocket. I instructed, "After we breach the stable, take out anyone who goes in or out." Vaska winked. "Just make sure those bandanas are visible." Since both Dmitri and I were wearing black, as was Yelena, it would be difficult during a firefight to differentiate us from Santiago's men who were also in dark fatigues. The red bandanas would alert him. Dmitri clapped Vaska on the back. "See you on the other side, my friend. Try not to die today. Emma would never forgive me. She looks sweet, but she's hell on wheels when she's angry." Dmitri laughed. "And we both know what Damien's girl is like when she gets pissed." They, of course, had both learned from Gregor about the knife wound and the brick to the head, which only made them love Yelena before they had even met her. "You cannot fault a girl for doing what we've all fantasized doing ourselves," Dmitri taunted. Vaska placed his hand on my shoulder. "She may not be officially Russian, but she is Russian in spirit. Do not worry, my friend. Chances are that piece of shit Santiago is the one who needs rescuing from her." His smile was strained. We both knew that wasn't true. The Colombians were ruthless bastards who'd rip a child from a mother's breast and kill it if it suited their purpose. If Yelena was still alive, there was no telling what condition I might find her in. There was no way to prepare myself mentally for that kind of situation other than to know deep in my gut that I loved her, and if she were alive, the rest we could tackle together. I just needed her to be alive. "Hang on, baby girl, I'm coming for you." Vaska pulled out his flask. He held it high. "Shot pistoli lo mashti at izobiliaya at krovati at loblavi." After wishing us a classic Russian toast of tables that break with abundance and beds that break from love, he then drank deeply and handed it to me. "Na nasho druzhbai," to our friendship. I took a swig and passed it to Dmitri. "Za ushpech." To success. Dmitri toasted before doing the same. He grimaced and shook his head. Damn you, Vaska, and your cheap-tasting vodka. This is man's work. You needing man's vodka. Vaska protested before he could take another swig, and returned the flask to a side pocket. Dmitri and I met gazes. After a nod, we started down the hill, keeping to the tree line. Within minutes, we were crossing the open field area. The stable was still about 300 yards off. All was quiet. Vaska, who was watching through his scope up on the ridge, would wait until he saw signs we were spotted before he fired. The closer we got to the stable, the better. Keeping our bodies as low as possible, we hurried across the field. By the time we heard the first cry of alarm, it was too late for the man. A bright burst of crimson exploded from his chest as Vaska fired. Since we'd been spotted, there was no point in being coy. Dmitri and I both started running at full speed toward our target. Right, 2 o'clock, Dmitri shouted. Lifting my right arm, I took out the assailant with a headshot over 150 yards away. Suppression fire popped up behind us. Vaska mowed down 3 of Santiago's men before they even had a chance to raise their M16 automatic rifles. We were within 50 yards of the stable. The Escalade parked nearby suddenly rocked. I knew that meant Vaska had hit it, and within half a second it would blow. Get down, I shouted. Dmitri and I both hit the ground and covered our heads. The luxury SUV exploded in a ball of fire, sending burning shards of metal and glass flying. Looking up, I saw one man who had taken cover behind a tractor start to rise to his feet. Closing one eye, I aimed and fired, hitting his ankle from between the massive tires. He hit the ground. I fired a second time, taking him out. A jeep came roaring up from around the corner. It stopped in front of the stable doors, blocking them. A man jumped into the back while another positioned a machine gun on the roof. It was an M134 GAU-17 Gatling gun. It was nicknamed the Vulcan cannon. It was a 6-barreled machine gun capable of firing 6,000 rounds per minute. It was usually only used in military aircraft for suppression fire that needed increased range and projectile lethality. I motioned to the left. Then Dmitri and I both took cover behind the smoldering metal frame of what was left of the Escalade. Dmitri cursed. Who the fuck was dumb enough to sell these assholes a goddamn Vulcan? Replacing the empty magazine in one of my Glocks, I ground out. When this is all over, I'm going to find the bastard and beat the crap out of him. We may have been illegal arms dealers, but there was a certain code among the better ones. You didn't sell big guns to little boys. In the end, it wasn't worth the trouble. They invariably caused problems and kicked up messes that caught the attention of the authorities, which increased the chances of heat on our operation. I had no problem selling guns and bombs to dictators, despots, and drug kingpins. It was all just business to me. But selling a gun that was too much firepower to someone who didn't know how to use it was dangerous. There was no fucking reason why some thug like Santiago and his crew, who mainly ran racetrack, drug, and kidnapping schemes, needed an anti-aircraft Gatling gun in the middle of Farmville, USA. If they fired it in the direction of Vaska up on the ridge, they could be over 25 yards off the mark and still kill him. You ready? Asked Dmitri. I nodded. Yeah, go for me. Dmitri stayed low, spraying the jeep with distraction fire as I went high. Taking the extra half second, I took aim and fired. The bullet went straight through the left eye of the man standing behind the gun. A sickening burst of brain matter, bone, and blood burst from behind his head. We both ducked behind the remnants of the truck. One more? Yeah. Dmitri fired again. This time I aimed down the barrel of the gun, the only way to disable the gun from a distance without matching it in firepower. Breathing out slowly and steady to calm my heartbeat, I closed my eye, aimed, and fired. Less than a quarter of a second later, the gun exploded. Dmitri laughed. You motherfucker. We'll never hear the end of it now. He was right. When we got out of this mess, I would make sure to remind them as often as possible of the impossible kill shot I'd just gotten off. This beat the time Gregor took out a moving target in Uzbekistan at over 800 yards with only a second-generation model Glock. The stable yard fell silent. Before Santiago's men had a chance to regroup, Dmitri and I ran for the stable doors and braced ourselves on either side. I raised an arm and fired at the padlock and chain, keeping the doors closed. We paused. Then with a shared nod, we each grabbed a handle and pulled the doors open along the track. The 10-foot-tall doors easily slid back along the stable wall. We waited again. Nothing. We knew this was not the only entrance to the stable. There was a good chance there were more men inside guarding Yelena. Hopefully Santiago himself. My jaw tightened. Him, I would personally kill. Slowly. On three, Dmitri mouthed. I nodded. 1, 2, 3. We swung into the doorway. The interior was dark and shaded. It took a moment for our eyes to adjust. We heard movement to the right and both swung, arms raised, guns at the ready. With the sun glare, we didn't see him in time. He got off several rounds, one of them striking Dmitri in the thigh. He stumbled but caught himself against the doorframe. I turned and fired, killing the man. Keeping my eyes trained on the interior for any movements in the shadows, I called out, "Dmitri, you okay?" He groaned. "Yeah, just a flesh wound." Hazarding a glance over my shoulder, I looked at his leg. Fresh blood had already soaked his pant leg. Grabbing the red bandana from my back pocket, I tossed it to him. He caught it with one hand. "Tie it off." That was supposed to be for Yelena. I would just have to make sure she was close to my side and Vaska's aim was true when we made a run for it. When Dmitri was ready, we took our first few steps down the wide, dirt-packed aisle. Agitated horses stomped and shook their heads in stalls to the right and left of us. "Yelena," I called out. No answer. "Yelena, answer me." Nothing. My heart seized.
Chapter 32. Yelena. The barrel of the gun pressed harder against my temple. I glared up at Santiago. He placed a finger against his lips as he gave me a wink. My stomach churned. On the other side of the stable, Damien continued to call out my name. Each time, there was a loud crash, then the sound of splintering wood. If I had to guess, he was kicking open each of the empty stall doors looking for me. It was only a matter of time before he reached us. My heart raced. My fingers were curled into fists so tight my nails dug painfully into my palms. I didn't know what to do. If I called out, Santiago would kill me. If I didn't call out, he was probably going to kill me anyway. My decision was made. Either way, Damien would be warned, and that was all that mattered. I took a deep breath, then screamed with all my might, "He's got a gun!" Santiago raised his gun and struck me with the edge of the handle. Pain exploded in my head, momentarily blinding me with a white flash. A small trickle of blood oozed over my right eye. I swiped at it with my free left hand. The wooden gate to my stall crashed open. Damien stood there, looking like a vengeful god, or better yet, a vengeful demon. He was dressed all in black. His front was covered in dirt and mud. Even though it had only been a few hours since I had been captured, he looked like he had aged 20 years. There were shadows around his eyes and deep lines of tension around his mouth. I had never seen him look so filthy and tired and handsome as hell. Never in my life would I think any other man was as beautiful or sexy as Damien Ivanov was in this very moment. He had come for me. For me. Unwanted and unloved Yelena Nikitina, me. There had never been a doubt in my mind that he would come. My wonderfully stubborn Scorpio. His dark eyes practically glittered with malice as he looked first at Santiago, then me. I was kneeling prone at Santiago's feet, my right hand still handcuffed to the iron ring. I could tell the moment Damien saw the blood matted in my hair and running down my cheek. "I'm fine," I mouthed. I didn't want him to get so upset he lost focus. There would be time to worry about my injury later.
"I'm going to get you out of this, baby girl,"
he said, his voice low and gruff with emotion. My eyes filled with tears. I could only nod, afraid to speak. Santiago taunted him.
Don't make promises you can't keep.
Damien took a step forward as he raised his gun. Behind him, I could see a second large figure who kept his back to us, watching for any more of Santiago's men. He looked like Vasca, but I couldn't tell with him turned away. All I did know was he was roughly Damien's size and equally as muscled and tattooed. Santiago grabbed my ponytail and wrenched my body up. He placed the gun barrel against my temple again, this time pressing into the fresh wound. I cringed and hissed air through my teeth as my body braced against the pain. Damien let out a low growl. Santiago cocked his head to the side.
Careful. You wouldn't want me to blow her pretty head off now, would you?
Forced to lower his gun, Damien's eyes narrowed.
You're a dead man.
Santiago laughed.
I do not think so. I have more men on their way. It is you who will die today. Let her go. This is between you and me.
It was between you and me. Imagine my delight when I learned that the pretty woman who had been causing me such an annoyance over these last few years was the very same woman you yourself were trying to track down. Fate, she smiled on me that day. My body started to tremble with fear. I clenched my jaw as I tightened my abdominal muscles, trying to still the tremors. I needed to appear calm so Damien could focus on Santiago. The last thing I wanted was him worried or distracted over me. I also didn't want to draw any attention to myself as I slowly shifted my left arm behind me. Using my fingernails, I continued to scrape and scratch at the small, flat head of a slightly loose nail. Finally, I felt the edge lift from the wood plank floorboard. Getting my fingernail under it, I pinched the top with my thumb and forefinger and pried it loose. Rolling the thin cylinder between my fingers, I realized I was in luck. The iron nail should be just thin enough to work. It wasn't as good as a bobby pin, but I had left that behind in Damien's safe house apartment when I'd gotten out of the pair of handcuffs yesterday. Never in a million years did I think I would be grateful that my loser stepfather used to lock me up on a daily basis. It seemed my lockpicking skills were coming in very handy lately. Pretending to swipe at the blood at my eye, I transferred the nail to my right hand. This would be extremely difficult. My hand was hanging higher than my shoulder and at an awkward angle. If at any point Santiago turned in my direction, he would clearly see what I was doing. Still, I had to try. Santiago sneered.
You thought you were such a big man insulting me in front of my men, but I am the big man now.
Damien fired back.
Kidnapping a defenseless female makes you a big man.
My mouth twisted at the word defenseless. Damien cast me a quick apologetic look. Santiago pressed the gun harder against my temple.
You are the idiot now. I'm the one who bested the great Ivanovs. It was so easy to take your woman from you, like candy from a little baby.
Damien's shoulders tensed as he planted his feet more firmly. He adjusted his grip on his guns.
So what now, Santiago? If you are such a big man, what is your big plan now?
The tip of the nail was inside the lock. I rolled it between my fingers, trying to feel for the pin. Santiago's voice rose a few pitches, showing his fear.
My men will be here any minute, and then I'm going to see you strung up by your thumbs. I'm going to force you to watch while I fuck your woman.
He pulled on my hair as he made the threat. The sudden jerk to my head made me let go of the nail. My heart stopped. Thank God the shaft was far enough in the handcuff lock it didn't drop to the floor. Gripping the small flat head, I continued to shift it around, waiting for the click. Santiago continued to taunt Damien.
She will finally know what it feels like to have a real man between her legs.
Inwardly, I shook my head, knowing I was staring up at a dead man. I knew the only reason why Damien hadn't already killed him was because he was holding a gun to my head. If I could just get out of these cuffs, I could lunge free of him. I caught Damien's gaze and very deliberately shifted my gaze to the handcuffs. His nod was almost imperceptible to anyone but me. Damien's brow furrowed.
And who will that real man be?
Santiago took the bait. Shifting the gun away from my head, he pointed at his chest. Me, asshole! I'm the real man! The handcuffs clicked. The latch opened. I slipped my wrist through and launched myself backward till I hit the far side of the stall. Damien raised his arm and fired, hitting Santiago in the shoulder. He fired again, hitting him in the chest. Santiago fell backward. His body slumped down the wall, leaving a crimson streak along the cement column. Damien fell to his knees before me. Dropping his guns to the side, his hands spanned my jaw as he tilted my head back. Before I could say a word, his mouth claimed mine. I melted into his embrace, drawing on the strength of his arms, needing it like my last breath. He rested his forehead against mine.
My God, I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost you.
Damien, I need to tell you. He smoothed my hair as his gaze rested on the wound along my hairline. His eyes hardened and his lips thinned.
First, I need to get you out of this hellhole and to a doctor.
I clasped his upper arms. No, it can't wait. I'm sorry about the knife and the brick.
That is what couldn't wait. You're sorry about the brick.
I bit my lip. I had wanted to say I love you, but suddenly felt foolish. What would he think if I just blurted out those words? Words I had never said to anyone. Words I hadn't heard anyone say to me since my mother died. He'd think I was some silly, stupid girl traumatized by the moment. After all, I hadn't laid eyes on the man in 3 years. We had only been together for less than 48 hours, in the span of which I had run from him twice and tried to kill him several times. How could he possibly believe that I loved him? How could he possibly even want my love? How could I make him understand that I had been a little in love with him since I was 10 and he'd caught me stealing that silly tube of lipstick? That I had collected little Happy Meal toys ever since because they reminded me of the one moment in my life when someone seemed to care, when someone had stood up and tried to protect me. How could I possibly put into words how he'd made me feel that night at Nadia's party, when he was so gruff and overbearing and controlling but also protective and sweet? Would he think it silly if he knew that tucked into that backpack filled with money and jewels was the Hello Kitty toy and the I Heart Washington, D.C. t-shirt he'd bought me? Would he laugh if he knew I'd worn that t-shirt to bed practically every night for the last 3 years? Before, when I was so certain that he would come to my rescue, there hadn't been a doubt in my mind that he loved me and I loved him. But now that he was kneeling before me looking all big and dangerous and more than a little scary, I lost my nerve. Doubt crashed in on me. He was so much older. His family was wealthy and powerful. He and his brother were practically legends both here and in Russia. He could have anyone he wanted, including tall, leggy models named Fifi and Mimi. All I was the unwanted stepdaughter of a 2-bit criminal. My own mother hadn't even wanted me enough to stay alive. I was a racetrack railbird who made her money on betting schemes and nothing more. I tried to lower my gaze. He placed a finger under my chin and lifted my face to his.
I love you too, my pretty Patsy angel.
How the hell did this man always read my mind? Maybe he really did possess demon powers. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, there was the slightest movement over his left shoulder. "Damien!" I screamed. Without thinking, I ducked under his shoulder and grabbed the Glock he had discarded near him. Raising my arm, I fired my gun just as Santiago was raising his. My bullet hit him right between the eyes. A faint mist of blood splattered over my face, shoulders, and chest as Santiago's body slumped lifeless to the side. Damien stared at me with wide, shocked eyes. A faint chuckle from the opening at the end of the stall made us both turn. The large man I saw earlier was standing there surveying the bloody scene.
So I guess technically, now we have to say that the damsel rescued you, instead of the other way around.
Damien rolled his eyes and groaned as he lowered his head into his hand.
Fuck off, Dimitri.
Damien lifted me into his arms and carried me out of the musty stable into the waning sunshine. The sky was a fiery orange and purple as dusk approached. Wrapping my arms around his neck, I rested my head on his shoulder. You're not really mad that I shot him instead of you, are you? Judging by his friend Dimitri's comments, I had a feeling he was going to take quite a bit of taunting from his big, scary Russian buddies over my actions. I also knew that Scorpios could be very touchy about this sort of thing. They like to be the ones in control doing the rescuing. The thing was, even though I may have fired the final shot, Damien did rescue me, and had been rescuing me for some time now. It had just taken me a little while to realize it. To others, his criminal activities may make him a bit tarnished, but to me, he really was my knight in shining armor. He kissed me on the forehead.
Baby, I'm just glad this time the gun was loaded, and for once, you weren't pointing it at me.
Chapter 33. Damien. If I lived to be 1,000, I would never get over the image of Yelena being forced to kneel in the dirt with a gun to her head. I looked down at her sleeping form and kissed the top of her head. She was tucked in my lap in the back seat of the SUV as we drove into the city. Thank God there wasn't a real mirror nearby, because my little fashionista would faint if she saw herself right now. Her yoga pants were covered in mud and torn in at least 3 places. Her hoodie was so caked in filth, I'd probably have to cut it off her. Her beautiful blonde hair was matted with dried blood from the cut above her forehead, and her neck and front were splattered with blood. I had done what I could with a wet bandana to at least get the blood off her face. She never looked more beautiful. I truly could not wait to spend the rest of my life staring down into her gorgeous face. I knew some men would unselfishly let the woman they loved go after a day like today. They would think that their lives were too dangerous to keep them by their side, that the woman would be better off without them, safer. They would spend the rest of their lives pining after what could never be, but confident in their sacrifice, knowing it was for the best. Not me. Yelena was mine, and I was keeping her by my side. Yes, my life was dangerous because of my criminal activities, but so was life in general. So call me a selfish bastard, the devil incarnate, an absolute cad. But she was staying with me, forever. I would keep her safe, and no one would love her more. Every day of her life, I was going to show her how much she was wanted and adored. She had spent enough time in her short life feeling unwanted and unloved. The last thing I was going to do was send her away for her own good. Fuck that. I was what was good for Yelena. I may have been stubborn and controlling and a pain in the ass, and I was absolutely certain that I hadn't seen the last time she'd try to hit me with a brick or stab me with a knife, but I didn't care. I was good for her, and she was everything for me. She was the fire and light in my life that chased away the unforgiving cold darkness. I wanted that light and craved her warmth. No, I had made up my mind several years ago, and I had no intention of changing it. She was mine, and I was going to make it official now, this very day. Vaska looked over his shoulder from the front passenger seat. You know, we've started a real mess with the Los Infeliz. Dimitri met my gaze in the rearview mirror. Throw, they'll definitely seek revenge. We're going to have a real war on our hands. All 3 of us burst out laughing. I cringed and held my finger to my lips as Yelena stirred, but then fell back to sleep. My poor baby was exhausted. There was nothing a Russian liked more than a good fight. Today was just the start. In a week, we would have the Los Infiles wiped off the map. We would send a very clear message. Don't fuck with us. And never, under any circumstances, do you fuck with our women. Vaska held up his phone, showing me a text.
The judge just confirmed. He'll meet us at Dimitri's.
I nodded.
Should we get the girls for the ceremony?
Asked Dimitri. They had taken Emma and Mary to a safe house that was more fortified than Fort Knox somewhere outside of Chicago. It was the primary reason why it was only the three of us that went after Santiago. We knew we could handle the bastard and his men alone, and we wanted every available man in our combined crews guarding the girls. After what had happened to Samara last night, and now Yelena today, we weren't taking any more chances with our women's safety. Vaska shook his head and shuddered.
I'm going to need to get my hands on some police riot gear before even considering approaching Mary after what I pulled this afternoon.
Dimitri rolled his eyes.
You're getting off easy. I had to promise Emma I'd take her to D.C. for a Shakespeare lecture series on the conflicts between platonic love and carnal desire in his sonnet.
Vaska raised an eyebrow.
You don't suppose they have any lectures on that weird vampire show Mary likes?
Dimitri shook his head.
Doubt it.
We pulled into Dimitri's underground parking garage. I carried Yelena up to Dimitri's master bedroom. I would have liked to have brought her to my own home, but that would have to wait till later today when I took her to Washington, D.C. The Ivanov plane was arriving at Midway in the next 20 minutes. I stood for a moment in indecision. Dimitri's entire bedroom was in pale creams and golds, including the bed covering. Both Yelena and I were covered in dirt, mud, and blood. With a shrug, I placed her in the center of the bed. I would just have to pay him back for any damage. She curled up in a small ball just like a little chipmunk. I headed into the bathroom and started the shower. It was a large chamber with multiple shower heads. Waiting till the water was nice and hot, and there was a pleasant steam rising inside the glassed-in chamber, I went to awaken Yelena.
Baby. Sweetheart, wake up.
She opened her eyes and groaned, closing them instantly. I stroked her cheek. She opened her eyes again. I was pleased to see none of the horror or fear inside the crystal blue depths this time. She rose up and stretched out her arms. My jaw tightened when I saw the harsh red mark which encircled her right wrist from where she had been handcuffed in the stall. If I could, I'd kill Santiago all over again. I would just have to be all right with wiping his entire organization and any family members I found off the map. But that was a plan for later. Right now, my focus was Yelena. All traces of fatigue gone, she jumped up. Oh my God! I clenched my fists. Here it comes. The anger, the recriminations, the blame. It was my fault. All of it. Sure. She had annoyed the Colombians with her racetrack scheme. But the real reason why they decided to finally come after her was me. I was the liability, not her. I was blaming her actions, when really it was me and my business which had actually put her in danger. Now that the shock of what had happened was wearing off, she was probably just realizing that. She would blame me, and she had every right to. She would probably demand to be set free. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that. I would never do that. She was mine. I would just have to figure out a way to convince her of that fact. She looked down at her hoodie and cried out in dismay. I'm covered in mud.
Wait, what?
She picked at the soiled fabric, which was stiff with dried mud and blood. Look at me. This is disgusting. With a shout of joy, I snatched her to me and kissed her. I hope my angel never changed. She pulled away, straining her head to the left. Stop, I'm gross.
No, you're not. You're the most beautiful, sexiest woman I've ever laid eyes on.
I picked her up and carried her into the bathroom. The moment I set her down, she yanked on the zipper to her hoodie. It was so caked in dried mud it was stuck. Pushing her hands away, I unzipped it for her and pulled it off her shoulders. The t-shirt underneath had sagged around the V-neck, showing a glimpse of her white lace bra. My cock surged to life, but I ignored the urge to strip her bare and carry her into the shower. I may have acted like a Neanderthal around her sometimes, but this wouldn't be one of those times.
Take your time in the shower. When you're done, there is a closet just to the left in the bedroom full of Emma's clothes. She said to help yourself to whatever you need.
Thank you, she said shyly. Meet me downstairs when you're done. She nodded. I turned to leave, but not without glancing over my shoulder to see her start to undress. Resisting the urge once more to join her, I forced myself to keep walking. I needed to talk to the judge and sign off on the marriage certificate, so he could marry us the moment she was done getting dressed. I had almost lost her. I wasn't taking any more chances. She would be my wife in less than an hour.
Chapter 34. Yelena. The shower felt heavenly. I twisted and turned, letting the shower heads massage my aching body. The water was hotter than I usually liked it, but this time I relished in the heat and steam as it washed away the nightmare I had just endured. It was probably the shock, but it really did feel like just that. A nightmare. A horrible dream. Like it didn't really happen. Probably because Damien had rescued me so quickly that the terror of my situation didn't have time to truly sink in. He really was magnificent. The way he'd kicked in that stable door, guns at the ready. He was like an action movie star. I'd known the moment I heard the first exchange of gunfire that it was Damien coming for me. Strangely, even as Santiago had come in and put a gun to my head, I knew deep down to my bones, I knew Damien would get to me in time. There was just something about him. He was dangerous and stubborn and way too controlling, but all those same attributes made me trust him with my life. After I washed the last of the dirt and mud out of my hair, I stepped out of the shower and wrapped myself in a soft, fluffy, oversized towel. Walking over to the mirror, I combed my fingers through my hair to get rid of the tangles. I found a hairdryer under the sink, dried my hair, and was finally feeling close to human again. Remembering what Damien had said about Emma's closet, I wandered back into the bedroom, cringing at the smears of mud on their nice bed coverlet. Leave it to a man to not care about such things. When I reached the closet, I laughed at the framed poster of a book cover titled The Nympho Librarian that was hanging to the right of the door. Flicking on the light, I ran my fingers over the various clothes which hung in neat rows. It was clear Emma didn't care about designer labels, but she did have really cute taste. Taking down one of the plaid pleated skirts, I held it up to my hips and cringed. We looked to be the same size, but I was an inch or two taller, which would make her already short skirts scandalously short on me. I decided on a pretty floral maxi dress. I had to add a pale pink cardigan because of the way the tops of my breasts spilled out of the low neckline. Thankfully, we wore the same size shoes. I selected a simple black ballet flat. Finding a notepad and pen on top of the inlaid bureau at the other end of the closet, I wrote her a note thanking her and promising to pay her back. I hadn't met her, but from the snippets I had heard from her husband Dimitri, I was sure I'd like her. Thinking of Emma made me think of Samara and Nadia. I missed them both terribly. I couldn't wait to be reunited with them. Exiting the bedroom, I walked down the stairs and followed the muted sound of conversation till I found them in a beautiful study. Every wall was covered in bookshelves which were filled with richly bound books in blue, green, and maroon leather with gold imprints. There was a large marble fireplace which had a roaring fire already going to chase away the winter chill that had started to set in now that the sun had gone down. Standing in front of the fire was Damien, Dimitri, and Voska. I was struck by how handsome the three were. Although not related, they all shared that same dangerous mystique which came with the territory when you were over 6 feet tall, heavily muscled and covered in tattoos. In short, they all looked like crazy badasses. Unlike me, none of them had showered or changed yet. They stood casually chatting in their mud-caked black fatigues with drinks in their hands, as if they were in designer suits at a party.
This must be the bride.
I turned at the sound of the voice. An elderly gentleman I hadn't noticed, dressed in a terribly misfitting brown suit, approached me. He snatched up my hand and enclosed it with both of his, pumping mine up and down vigorously. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Damien rushed over. Pointing to the elderly man, I asked, "What did he just call me?" The elderly man continued to talk over me.
"Damien, your bride is a beauty. No wonder you were in such a rush to marry her."
He laughed, giving Damien an exaggerated conspirator wink. My eyes widened in shock. Marry? Marry? Damien placed restraining hands on my shoulders.
"Yelena, we've already talked about this."
I shook my head. "No, you talked about it. I never agreed to it." Sure, I loved him, but what did that mean? We had barely been together for 24 hours, and he expected me to marry him? This was insane. Besides, this was hardly the wedding of my little girl dreams. There was no church draped in sweet-smelling flowers, or Vera Wang dress with a long train, or even champagne and dancing. Technically, he hadn't even proposed. It's not like I needed a big, expensive ring, but didn't I at least deserve a traditional proposal? His voice had lowered an octave, a sure sign he was getting angry.
"This is for your own good."
I didn't care. I broke free of his grasp. "I'm standing here in ill-fitting, borrowed clothes." I gestured wildly in his direction. "You are covered in mud and the blood of the lunatic who just kidnapped me." Damien ran a hand through his hair.
"Exactly. You were fucking kidnapped. Jesus Christ, Yelena. I almost lost you. I'm not going to take that chance again. The Ivanov name brings protection. No one would dare harm my wife."
He just didn't get it. I didn't want him to marry me to protect me. I wanted him to marry me because he loved me. I wanted a pretty wedding, not for the sake of having a pretty wedding, but to finally feel like I belonged and was worth something. My real father didn't want me. My mother left me, and my stepfather never let a day go past without telling me I was an unwanted burden. Was it asking too much to have something real that was just for me? This half-assed, slapped-together shotgun wedding wasn't it. Angrily swiping at the tears which began to fall, I backed away from him. "Sometimes I really hate you, Damien Ivanov." I stormed out of the room. Chapter 35. Yelena. Rushing past several doors, I opened the set of double doors at the end of the hall. The floor of the large square room was covered wall to wall with padded mats. Even the walls were padded. In the corner was a canvas cart on wheels filled with sparring gloves, helmets, and pugil sticks. In the far corner was a punching bag and a pommel horse. It looked to be a private fighting gym. The double doors banged open. Damien crossed the threshold. With a pointed look at me, he slammed the doors shut and locked them. Turning to face me, he crossed his arms over his chest.
"Start talking,"
he growled. "Fuck you," I fired back. Damien stalked toward me till I was pressed against the wall. Towering over me, he used both hands to cup my jaw, tilting my head back.
"Start talking,"
he repeated with more emphasis.
"Or I take off my belt."
My jaw dropped. "You wouldn't dare. I'll scream for Dmitri and Vaska."
"Go ahead. Cry out for help. I dare you,"
he challenged. His dark eyes glittered with rage. Breaking free, I fell several steps back till I was within arm's reach of the canvas equipment cart. Placing it between him and me, I shouted, "I don't want to marry you!" "Not like this," my heart screamed. The truth was I did want to marry him. I just wanted to know he was marrying me for me, and not for some sense of obligation to protect me or male pride.
I got some bad news for you, my malenki padshi angel. You will marry me if I have to toss you over my shoulder and drag you in front of that judge.
Reaching into the cart for one of the padded pugil sticks, I grabbed the red one. Arching an eyebrow, he asked,
You really want to do this?
I adjusted my grip on the pugil stick and held it defensively in front of me. Damien whipped his belt off and tossed it aside. He then ripped off his black t-shirt. Oh, God. He really was magnificent. All toned muscle and brightly colored tattoos. They ran up his arms and shoulders before creeping up his neck. Twisting and writhing images of mythical beasts, strange symbols, and even flowers. His black cargo pants hung low on his hips, emphasizing his flat, muscled abdomen. I could see the press of his already hard cock against his inner thigh. Swallowing, I ignored the sick twist of my stomach. Raising my chin, I challenged, "Bring it on!"
Chapter 36. Damien. I circled around Yelena to reach into the bin to retrieve the blue pugil. Testing the weight of the thick pole with heavy padding on both ends, I kicked off my shoes before walking back to the center of the padded mats. Without warning, I stepped forward and swung my right arm out, using the pugil stick to sweep her feet. Yelena flew backwards and landed on her ass. Before she could recover, I grabbed her left ankle and spread her legs, watching as her dress slid up to her hips, exposing her thighs. I could see my naughty girl didn't have any panties on. My cock lengthened. Before I could step between her legs, Yelena pulled her leg back and lithely arched her back to force her body upright. She swung out with her own pugil stick and barely missed boxing my left ear. She gave me a knowing smirk before backing up and shifting her weight on bent knees. Evaluating my target, I feigned right then swung left, tapping her hip with the padded end and sending her off balance. Before she could right herself, I swung my foot out and once more swept her legs. Again, she went down on that cute little ass of hers. I grabbed her right leg and flipped her onto her stomach. I fell to my knees, ready to straddle her. Visions of hiking her dress up and entering her from behind as I pulled on her ponytail momentarily distracted me. Yelena used that moment to shimmy out of my reach and use her pugil stick to regain her feet. You see where I'm going with this? I taunted. In your dreams, she fired back, the brat. Oh, baby girl, I'm about to make my dreams your painful reality. I charged. She parried. We tapped the center of the poles, angling them left and right before disengaging. Again I charged. She blocked my offense, but I could see she was tiring. The pugil sticks were heavy, and she lacked the arm strength to outlast me. In a surprise move, Yelena twisted to the left and brought the center of the pole down on my exposed knuckles. The sharp pain forced me to drop one end. She took advantage and thrust the padded end into my side. Before she could retreat to a safe distance, I raised my pugil stick and twisted it with her own, forcing it from her hands and across the room. I immediately lowered my stick to the floor, so the moment she dove for her own, she tripped, landing on her stomach. As she tried to crawl towards her weapon, I pulled at the hem of her dress. She twisted onto her back and tried to kick out, but it was too late. The flimsy fabric easily tore straight up to her stomach. With an outraged cry, she fumed. This wasn't mine, it was Emma's. I smiled. I'll buy you both another one. She flipped back onto her stomach and reached for her pugil stick. I noticed her bottom was red from all the falls she had taken. While I wished that glorious blush was caused by the leather of my belt or my own hand, it still was satisfying to think I would be adding to it soon. Yelena sprung onto her feet. As she bent her knees and adjusted her weight, I could see the play of muscle on her slim thighs and just a peek of the heaven that laid between them. Admit I owned your ass, and I'll consider letting you off easy. I taunted her, knowing and loving the fact she would say no. Go to hell, she bristled. That's my girl. With her flushed cheeks and bright eyes, it was obvious she was enjoying this battle of wills as much as I was. But it was time to put an end to it. Swinging the pugil stick to the left and right, I stepped forward and shoved it between her open thighs. Since she weighed next to nothing, I easily lifted her high. Elena cried out in shock as she dropped her stick and reached out to steady herself on my shoulders when her body pitched forward. I breathed against her mouth. Lowering my voice, I ordered, "Beg me to fuck you." "No," she rasped defiantly. Her chest rose and fell with her labored breathing. Suddenly, it was vitally important to my very being that she acknowledge my authority over her. Call it misplaced arrogance. Call it possessiveness. Call it obsessive control. I didn't give a damn. Dropping the pugil stick, I wrapped my arm around her back, securing her to my front. Walking a few steps, I moved to the far corner of the room to the padded pommel horse. My hands easily spanned her small waist as I lifted her high and forced her to straddle the rounded raised stump. With its leather surface close to 1.5 feet wide, it stretched her legs open nicely. And with its close to 4 feet high legs, it was the perfect height for what I had planned. "Damien, what are you—" Ignoring her question, I grabbed her hips and pulled her back till her ass was just hanging off the edge of the horse. I pushed the hanging shreds of her dress out of the way. Elena reached out and grasped the metal handlebar to keep herself upright. "Get me off this thing." "To quote one of your favorite words, no." Reaching my arm back, I spanked her right cheek. My full open palm made contact with her skin with a satisfying smack. Elena howled in outrage as she tried to climb off the pommel horse. I fisted the loose torn fabric of her dress to hold her in place. Shifting to the side, I used my other arm to vigorously continue her punishment. Raising my arm over and over again, I reveled in the red handprints that began to appear on her pale skin. She squirmed and screamed, but I refused to relent. I loved the feel of her soft, heated skin beneath my palm. "Beg me to fuck you," I shouted over her screams. She refused to answer. Pressing with the hand that held her down by her dress, I forced her hips open even wider as they slipped over the edge of the leather horse. The position also spread her ass cheeks and left the delicate folds of her cunt vulnerable. Directing my aim, I landed the next blow over her pussy. "Stop! It hurts! Stop!" she cried. "You know how to make it stop." I spanked her pussy harder, wanting the lips to swell and pulse so when I finally entered her, she would feel every thick inch. "Stop! Beg me to fuck you." Elena let out a howl instead of answering. This time, I directed my aim to her even more vulnerable asshole. Using my 2 middle fingers, I gave the puckered entrance a series of harsh taps, watching as the soft pink turned a bright red. Her ass cheeks trembled as she desperately tried to clench them closed, but her open straddle position over the horse prevented her. "Ow! Oh God! That hurts! Please stop!" "I'm only going to ask you one more time before I get my belt. Beg me to fuck you." "Oh God! Fuck me! Fuck me hard!" she called out as she bent forward, pushing her ass into my palm. Releasing her dress, I positioned myself behind her and unzipped my pants. I finally released my painfully erect cock. Fisting my shaft, I gave it a few pumps to relieve the building tension. With my other hand on the small of her back, I edged my hips closer. The hide of the pommel horse was perfect. The brown leather covering between her legs showed a large dark wet stain from her reluctant arousal. Sliding my 4 fingers over her swollen and sore pussy, I coated my hand before running it down and up the length of my cock. Inching closer, I pushed the head of my cock against her asshole. Elena bucked. "No, not there." "I don't know a better way to prove to you that your ass is literally mine." I bit back. I shifted my hips forward, watching as the head forced its way past her clenching anus. The skin around her hole whitened and smoothed as it was forced to accept the thick intrusion. Elena cried out. Undeterred, I thrust forward. I took a sick pleasure in seeing the heavy shaft of my cock disappear into her ass. Knowing that her arousal was barely enough to slick the way. Knowing it would cause her pain that was only barely tinged by pleasure. This wasn't for her. It was for me. I needed this. I needed this ultimate possession to cool the primal rage which still coursed through my veins. Moving back, I thrust forward, pistoning in and out of her body. Elena groaned, Her white knuckles clutched at the metal handlebar. I grabbed hold of her ass cheeks. The red, punished skin felt hot on my palms. Yelena hissed in pain. Still I thrust. Her body clenched around my shaft like a vice. I could feel every tremble, every ripple of muscle. "Where's my cock?" Yelena moaned. I gave her left cheek a quick swat and gritted my teeth at the rush of sensation up my shaft as her body responded by clenching even harder. "Where's my cock?" "In my ass," she whimpered. "Louder," I barked. "In my ass," she sobbed. "Please come, please. I can't take much more." Taking pity on my baby girl, I reached between her legs and pushed 2 fingers into her cunt. I could feel the movement of my cock through the thin layer of skin that separated them. I stroked my fingers in and out in a slow rhythm. Yelena's hips raised as a low groan escaped her lips. "That's it, baby. Come for me. Come while my cock is deep in your ass." Yelena whimpered again as I pushed a 3rd finger in. I knew between my cock in her ass and my fingers in her pussy, she was feeling stretched to the point of breaking. I began to thrust more violently. Her body shifted back and forth on the pommel horse as she absorbed the force. "Oh, God! Oh, God!" Her cunt spasmed around my fingers. I thrust into her several more times before releasing a thick stream of deep seed into her ass. Yelena collapsed fully onto the horse, her arms hanging lax on the sides. I pulled my slackening cock free, liking the sight of my seed as it now dripped from her gaping hole. Circling around to the side of the pommel horse, I used the edge of my knuckle to raise up her chin. "Who's my dirty baby girl?" Elena's lips quirked. "I really fucking hate you." "I know, baby." Chapter 37. Damien, Washington, D.C. "You're an idiot." "I know." Gregor shook his head. "What were you thinking?" I raised my glass and stared down at the amber contents for a moment before taking a sip. "Probably the same thing you were thinking before you dragged old as dirt Judge Matthews onto a plane to marry you in Samara." "Fair enough." Gregor stood and crossed to the sideboard where a tray of crystal decanters was displayed. He picked up the one which held my preferred drink of Macallan rare scotch. Lifting it up, he turned and raised an eyebrow. I nodded. He crossed back to me and topped off my drink before pouring himself another. Setting the decanter on a side table between the two of us, he sat back down across from me in the large oxblood leather armchairs before the fire in his living room. Yelena and I had arrived a few hours earlier. The girls were upstairs in Gregor's bedroom, filling each other in on the past 3 years. Gregor held his glass up to the light of the fire. "This stuff isn't half bad." My mouth quirked in a half-hearted smile. I stared past him at the red star on his yolka tree. It was easy to imagine Yelena crouching beneath its spruce branches, rifling through gold and green wrapped presents to hand one to each of our children. Her beautiful hair would be pulled back into a loose ponytail. Around her neck would be the Cartier diamond necklace I had given her the night before on Christmas Eve, when the children were tucked into their beds, and we were sharing a quiet drink before the fire. It all seemed so real to me, so normal. I wanted that for my future. I wanted that life. I wanted her. I realized now in my haste to secure her by my side, I had seriously fucked up. I had made her feel as if she and her future weren't worth any effort on my part. "Were you really still covered in blood and mud from killing that bastard Santiago?" I rubbed my eyes with my hand and groaned. "Yes." "Well, what are you going to do about it?" "Hell if I know. Any advice, big brother?" "Jewelry. Lots of expensive jewelry." "I hope you're not implying you purchased my affection so easily?" Both of us stood as Samara entered the room. The change in Gregor's demeanor was startling. The energy in the room shifted. He wrapped his arm around her waist and gave her a quick kiss on the mouth. "Trust me, Malushka. There was absolutely nothing easy about finally making you mine." She gave him a playful slap against his chest, then wrapped her hand around his neck and leaned up to give him another kiss. Then she whispered against his mouth, "Yes, but I was worth it." Gregor stroked her hair. "Yes, my love, you were definitely worth it." The true depth of my mistake became more apparent to me. I had made Yelena feel as if she and our future weren't worth any effort on my part. No proper proposal, no ring. A half-assed shotgun wedding where I hadn't even bothered to wash the blood off my hands. Samara cast a glance at me. Did you tell him he's an idiot? Like the dutiful husband he had quickly become, Gregor nodded. Yes, wife, several times. Tell him again. She then turned to me. It's pretty obvious to Nadia and me, the way Yelena is colorfully cursing your name up there, that she obviously loves you. I started to rise. Maybe I should go talk to her. Samara shook her head. I wouldn't recommend it just yet. She's still pacing back and forth and ranting. She won't stop flipping her pink stiletto knife open and closed every time she says your name. Damn it. I knew I shouldn't have given that knife back to her. Samara crossed over to the same sideboard and grabbed a bottle of red wine from the cabinet below. She then slipped the stems of 3 crystal glasses between her fingers. I just came down to grab some wine. Gregor cleared his throat. Not for all of you. Samara leaned up on her toes and gave him a kiss on the cheek. I'm having cranberry juice. He gave her a smack on the ass as she turned to walk away. Good girl. I raised my glass as a toast to them both. That was fast. Gregor returned to his chair. It's still way too soon. We have a doctor's appointment next week, but I'm not telling anyone officially just yet. I looked at him thoughtfully. You're going to make a great father. He swirled the contents of his glass, letting the ice cubes rattle against the crystal. Well, our father set the ball pretty low. There's no reason why his or our sins should rest on your son's shoulders. We can change the future. We both have more money than God. There's no reason to continue down this path if we don't want to. Perhaps. And don't let Samara hear you say it's going to be a boy. She's wishing for a girl. Probably just to torture me. I laughed. The great Gregor Ivanov tamed by a woman and a little baby girl. I could just imagine what a fiercely protective father he would be to his daughter. I pitied any man who came near her, let alone tried to date her. Don't laugh too hard. From where I'm sitting, you're in lockstep right behind me, little brother. I raised my glass again. To the women in our lives. May they happily torture us till our dying day. We both drank. Gregor rested his glass on his knee. Speaking of the women in our lives, have you talked with Nadia yet? My brow furrowed. Not yet. There hasn't been any time. Besides, when I walked through the door with Yelena, I was the last person she wanted to talk to. Those two hugged and screamed, then immediately ran upstairs like 2 teenagers to find Samara. She's pissed at me. I've put her on lockdown. Won't let her go to that jewelry store of hers. My brow furrowed. Why? I didn't want to tell you over the phone. That nastiness was Samara's parents. Before she died, her mother hinted that Igor Novikov was going to come after Nadia after I deprived him of Samara. I leaned back in my chair. Fuck. Igor is in Russia right now, and I haven't been able to find anything to substantiate it, but I've taken some precautions just to be on the safe side. Like that. I had Mikhail wire up some additional security cameras inside her shop, he said quickly before draining his glass. That way, we can monitor her when I finally allow her to return to it. I whistled. He had the decency to at least look abashed. We both knew how Nadia felt about us being overprotective. She had suffered through a childhood being surrounded by bodyguards and constantly being told she couldn't do things her friends could simply because she was an Ivanov. Now she was in her 20s and our father was dead. She liked our interference in her life even less. And what does our illustrious head of security say about all this? Mikhail? Hell, he wanted to do worse. He argued for me to send her away to some convent in the mountains of Switzerland until we could take care of Igor. He's pissed. He thinks I'm not taking the threat seriously enough. The fire had started to die. I stood and lifted the iron poker near the fireplace and jabbed it into a smoldering log. Using the poker, I shifted it into a better position on top of the pile of logs where it would catch flame. Well, he's always had a special interest in Nadia. I'm aware. Does he still understand it's not possible? Gregor nodded. He knows this is about family honor and nothing personal. Maybe it's time we arrange for Nadia's marriage to someone we trust. Yes, I agree. After the holidays, we'll start vetting candidates. We clinked glasses. With that settled, my mind returned to Yelena. I sat and stared at the fire as a log popped and crackled before catching. The orange and crimson flames were reflected in the glass I was holding. I sighed. I'm an idiot. Gregor just laughed.
Chapter 38. Yelena. I returned to the guest bedroom where I had been staying in Gregor and Samara's house for the past week. Damien had not been pleased, but I insisted. I needed time to think and space. When I was around him, it was hard to know my own mind. He was just so big and overwhelming and strong. The man radiated masculine energy. It was hard to resist. On my bed was a large black box wrapped with a glittering gold ribbon. Damien. He had been leaving gifts for me all week, each gift accompanied by my daily horoscope, all suspiciously pointing to a future alliance with a Scorpio mate. Attached to the ribbon was a cream vellum tag with gold foil. In its deeply slanted masculine writing was today's horoscope. The moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter is aligned with Mars. Now is the perfect time to align your star with Scorpio. I'm pretty sure half of that was taken from that Aquarius song. Still, it was sweet. Lifting the lid, I pushed aside the cream tissue paper and gasped. I pulled a gown out, pressed it to my chest, and twirled about the room. It was a black, sheer, tulle gown from Valentino's recent spring collection. Embroidered over the long ruffled skirt and empire waist hem were incredibly elaborate zodiac signs and stars. It was perfect. The gifts had a theme, all pointing to a future together. First, there was the Cartier diamond Destiny necklace. It was a stunning 5-carat diamond surrounded by pave diamonds on a delicate gold necklace. Next, there were the first-class tickets to Paris just in time for the spring shows. Included with the tickets was a letter from the head seamstress for Yves Saint Laurent agreeing to meet Damien and me for lunch to discuss a possible internship for me. Finally, there were the 2 tickets for a performance of the National Symphony Orchestra for tonight. It was for a concert of Tchaikovsky's best-known works. It would be the first time I was actually seeing him in a week. I twirled around the room again. I could hear his deep voice downstairs in the entryway. Despite growing up mostly in America, he still had a sexy Russian accent. I just loved the way he rolled his R's. He looked up as I stepped onto the landing above him. Even from a distance, I could see his stark sapphire eyes glitter with desire as he watched me slowly descend the staircase. I swished my hips a bit so that the long ruffled skirt fanned out around me with each step. He looked so handsome in his tuxedo, just as I imagined he would. The perfectly tailored coat emphasized the hard planes of his chest and broad shoulders. The glimpse of his tattoos added a seductive hint of danger. Although unlike what I'd imagined all those years ago, because this time it wasn't some faceless model on his arm. It was me. As I got closer, his expression changed. His jaw tightened as his brow furrowed. I stopped right in front of him. Instead of telling me how beautiful I looked in the dress he'd bought me, he scowled as his gaze went from the top of my head to my toes and back, only to then settle on my breasts. Damien stretched his arm out and pointed upstairs.
You're not going out in that. Go up and change.
Grasping the gossamer tulle fabric of my skirt, I spread out my arms and twirled. What are you talking about? I love it. It fits perfectly. A muscle ticked in his cheek.
I mean it, Yelena. I'm ordering you to go upstairs and change.
I pointed my finger at him and jabbed it in his chest. You're ordering me? You're the one who got me this dress.
Obviously.
His gaze traveled pointedly to my chest.
That was a mistake.
I looked down. Realization dawned. The dress was a little see-through. Although not blatant in the right light, you could make out the outline of my breasts and just the slightest hint of nipple. I, of course, wasn't wearing a bra. The provocative glimpse of flesh was part of the haute couture allure of the dress. That is what designer fashion was about, pushing boundaries. Apparently, Damien hadn't realized this when he'd bought it for me. I placed my fists on my hips. I'm not changing. He crossed his arms over his chest.
And I'm not letting another man see you in that dress.
We stood there staring each other down. Finally, Damien ran a hand through his hair and cursed low in Russian. One of these days, I was going to have to learn Russian curse words so I knew what he was always saying about me. Letting out an angry breath, he ordered,
"Wait here. I'll be back."
He started to storm off and then swiftly turned. Without saying a word, he grabbed the small gold-beaded clutch from my hand. Opening up the latch, he pulled the 2 symphony tickets out and, with a pointed look at me, he placed them in the inside jacket pocket of his tuxedo. He then turned and left. Angry that he had once again read my mind and deprived me of the dramatic gesture of attending the symphony without him, I stomped off to find Nadia and Samara and a glass of wine. 30 minutes later, Damien returned. Carrying a black garment bag into the kitchen, he tossed it onto the counter near the stool where I was sitting. He unzipped it and pulled out one of the most magnificent garments I'd ever seen. It was a capelet, designed to delicately drape over your shoulders while not obstructing too much of your gown. This one was made entirely of glossy black feathers, with the tips dipped in shimmering gold. Oh my God. Damien lifted it and placed it over my shoulders.
A feathered cape for my Malenki Padshia angel.
He gently placed his warm palms against my neck as he lifted my curled hair out from beneath the capelet and swept it behind my shoulders. He snapped the gold and diamond clasp closed over my breasts, then took a step back. He surveyed me from head to toe, then nodded his approval. He then stepped close and offered me his arm. Placing my hand in the crook of his elbow, I let him lead me out to his car. Giving him a sidelong glance, I asked, "So how does it feel to have to compromise?" He gave me a playful growl.
"I don't like it one bit. Don't get used to it."
After taking our seats in a box at the Kennedy Center, Damien fidgeted through the entire suite from Sleeping Beauty. Covering my mouth with my program, I leaned over and asked, "Are you okay?" He ran his hands down his thighs.
"Fine. I'm just sitting here thinking about you in that damn dress."
I placed my hand on his thigh. Inching it further, I could feel the hard ridge of his cock as it pressed against his tuxedo trousers. Now I was the one fidgeting and squirming in my seat. Images of him flipping up my skirt and unzipping his pants right here and now in front of all these people floated across my mind. I licked my lips. A low growl emanated from Damien.
"Damn it, woman. Don't lick your lips like that, or I swear to God I'm going to grab you by the waist and have you straddle my cock here and now."
My stomach flipped. And just because it had been a whole week since I could push his buttons, I ran the edge of my palm down his shaft. Damien grabbed me. Pulling me onto his lap, he claimed my mouth in an act of pure possession. His tongue swept in to duel with mine the moment the symphony swelled to new heights as they played the intensely dramatic final moments of Swan Lake. My hand reached inside his jacket to caress the warm expanse of his chest through the thin silk of his shirt. His hard arousal pressed into my hip. Uncaring of the audience seated quietly below our balcony, I reached between us for the zipper of his pants. just as our balcony was flooded with light. Breaking our kiss, we both turned, but were blinded by the theater spotlight trained directly on us. Oh my God! I buried my face against his neck. This was beyond humiliating. I was about to be thrown out of the Kennedy Center for a lewd act in public. I'd never be able to go to a symphony again. Damien chuckled as he rubbed my back.
Baby, look up.
No, I murmured, my voice muffled by his shoulder. He placed a finger under my chin and forced my gaze to his.
I promise, it's not what you think.
Placing his hands around my waist, he lifted me off his lap and onto my feet. He then stood. Hastening a quick glance to my right, I could see countless opera glasses trained on us as a wave of hushed whispers and coughs swept through the audience. The pianist played the dark and ominous opening chords of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. The song that was playing that infamous night in Damien's car. Confused, I turned my eyes back to Damien. This was supposed to be a concert of only Tchaikovsky. He gave me a wink and reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small red leather and gold-embossed Cartier box just as the violins began to play in earnest. My hands covered my mouth as he slowly lowered to one knee. He opened the ring box, which had the largest, most gorgeous diamond ring I had ever seen in my life. The breath left my body. Oh my God. He clasped my shaking left hand and placed the ring on my finger.
I know sometimes it feels like the stars are against us, but you truly are my angel. You bring light and warmth to my world. And even though you challenge my patience and my sanity at times, I know that life will never be boring with you around. I want to be there for every smile, every laugh, and every kiss. I love you. So, Yelena Marie Nikitina, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?
Yes! Oh my God, yes! I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him as he rose to his feet and, placing his arms tightly around my waist, lifted me off the ground. The audience sprang to their feet and broke into applause, several even whistling and cheering. The symphony started to play the wedding march by Wagner. I love you, I declared over the rousing music and applause. He cupped my cheek.
I know. Just remember who said it first.
My mouth dropped open, but before I could argue with him, he started to kiss me again. Such a Scorpio thing to do.
Epilogue. Mikhail. Something was wrong. I punched in the 13-digit code for the surveillance system. Working off its default protocols, the computer immediately brought up my first priority project, codename Kroshka. As the screens glowed to life, I scanned the numerous camera angles. Her brothers knew of my surveillance. Nadia did not. I'm sure she would be madder than hell if she knew we'd been watching over her, even after she'd left her brother's house. She had wanted her independence, and having this small apartment gave her a sense of that. But that didn't mean I stopped protecting her. I would never stop protecting her. Anxiously, I clicked in the command to shuffle through the various security screens. All seemed quiet. Then I saw her cell phone plugged in on the tiny shelf near the cash register. That meant she was somewhere on property, not at her brother's house tucked safely in bed like she was supposed to be. I continued to click through the security screens searching for her. If I didn't set eyes on her, it meant she was up in her apartment. Either way, I was going to head over there and drag her back to her brother's. Finally, I found her. She was alone, tinkering with something at her workbench. I shifted to the next screen, which showed the outside of her jewelry shop. I watched as a large SUV with no plates pulled up. 3 men dressed in all black got out. They had ski masks over their faces, and one of them was tucking a handgun into his waistband. Fuck. She was completely unaware of the coming danger. I was down in the garage and behind the wheel of my Maserati Levante SUV in less than 2 minutes. It would take me 3 excruciating minutes to reach Nadia. I hit the steering wheel with my fist. God damn it. I had been a bastard and a fool. The time for just standing in the background and watching Nadia from afar was over. I was finally going to claim her as mine.
This is the end of Vicious Oath, a Podium audio production. If you enjoyed this audiobook, we would love for you to rate and review it. For more sensually dark romance, check us out at podiumaudio.com and sign up for our newsletter. We promise we won't spam you. Also, consider joining our community of listeners, fans, and trolls on social media. We're active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit. We'd love to connect. You have been listening to Vicious Oath, Book 2 of Ivanov Crime Family. Produced by Troy Odie. Written by Zoe Blake. Performed by Holly Jackson and Tor Tom, members of SAG-AFTRA. Text copyright 2020 by Zoe Blake. Production copyright 2022 by Podium Audio. All rights reserved.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.